The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual guests. If you're a sensitive snowflake that may get easily offended, then turn this off immediately. If you want to hear the real truth about the gun culture, then stick around. This is the Armed Citizen Podcast. What's going on, my Go Squad? Welcome to the Armed Citizen Podcast Live. This is episode number 245. Today's date is Tuesday, June 7th, 2022. We are live, as always, on YouTube and over on Facebook. So if you're out there in the live chat, go ahead and say something. We don't know that you're out there unless you do. If you're watching this in replay or in podcast form, make sure you utilize the comment section. The conversation does not have to stop here. Go ahead and use that comment section with any comments, questions, whatever you have, and we'll get back to you on that. If you're out there and they allow you to rate this podcast, feel free to rate us however you feel. I'm not going to ask for 5 stars, but whatever you feel we're worthy, and sometimes it's worth about 1 star. So, but it does help and all of that. So if you're out there, please utilize that. If you want to call or text in, yes, you can call and text into the show. Utilize the Ghost Tactical Hotline presented by our good friends Rod and Shelly Gates at Aegis Gun Care. That number is 530-364-4678. If you're a veteran, really anyone, but especially if you're a veteran and you're in that hole, you're in the darkness and you can't seem to find the light, call me, text me, email me 24/7. I cannot give you medical advice, but I could probably be a pretty decent ear to talk you through some shit. If you are looking for someone to get you some medical advice, please remember 2 things. 1, you are not alone in this fight. You have a lot of brothers and sisters out here that are willing and able to help. And 2, the world is a much better place with you in it. So I implore you, please utilize the Veteran Crisis Hotline, 1-800-273-8255. Once again, 1-800-273-8255. Veterans, press the number 1. We are spotlighting, as always, United States Marine Corps. If you have any questions on what it takes to earn the title United States Marine, see the website marines.com. And as always, we're a proud member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. Please check out all the great pro-gun, pro-2-way podcasts over on selfdefenseradio.net. Let me get this off of my ugly ass mug and bring in a couple of our guests tonight. As always, riding shotgun with this, folks, this is not an avatar. That is really Clover. He will not blink for about 2 hours. He has that ability. From the great state of Texas, the tactical virus. Leprechaun. What's up, Clove?
Yeah, don't cross me. I got my eyes on you.
Yeah, I bet you do. They're blue. They're blue, beady, weird eyes.
They are
that's kind of scary.
They are beady. You're right. Yeah.
Yeah. Since you are riding shotgun as always, what is a shotgun of the week?
Let's go tactical, man. Let's go Turkish tactical.
Oh, okay.
So I was at Interim and just walking through, and a slick looking AR style shotgun caught my eye, and I walk over there.
Sure.
I didn't notice the booth or the, what it was. I just like, whoa, that looks freaking cool. And it was an Escort DF12. That's David Frank Escort DF12. In FDE in black. Pretty sharp looking shotgun. Escort, I think, is Hatsan. I think is who makes those over in Turkey. If I'm thinking correctly, but
don't get me lying. I don't know.
I don't know either. But it's pretty sweet, man. It had an old school style carry handle, and all on it.
Nice.
It was pretty neat.
That's
the way
interesting. Like an A2 carry handle, kind of.
Yeah.
On a tactical shotgun. That's an interesting interpretation.
And like a fluted barrel, had like a low profile handguard, full Picatinny on the bottom, and a little partial, on the top for the A-frame, front sight. And then like a fluted barrel. It looked good. Maybe a piece of junk, but it looked good.
That's interesting.
Oh, the Turks make good guns, man.
They do. Oh, and I'm a big, in the last few years,
Not all
uh,
of them, but I hear you.
not all of them, but there's a handful that are putting out some really, really good stuff. Really good stuff.
Yeah, look at this stuff from TriStar. I mean, the TriStar guns are good. Big supporters of Walk Talk America, by the way. So I'm going to crowbar them in there. But
speaking of,
come a long way, man. They have.
They're not very big
have.
supporters. They're not very big supporters of Clover Tack. Just saying. Actually, I got a call with them Friday, believe it or not. So maybe.
Well, I'll put in a good word.
It's all about Clover. It's all about Clover. He's got to bring everything back to, well, there might be a good company.
Hey,
they're not.
Mike started it. I'm just letting him know.
Yeah, he'll be on the next episode after that call goes well.
No, I was talking. That was when we were talking backstage. You were talking about walking out and I was smoking my pipe. That was who I was talking to. Remember?
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. For Ryan and his brother, all the Baders, they're good people. I'll put in a good word for you. I'll tell them.
Don't lie to them. There's no sense in lying to them.
Right.
Let's be honest here. Oh shit!
But that's good to know. I didn't know that, so that's good to know. So if I do any work with them, then yeah, we can.
He'll get drop your name quicker than a motherfucker.
No, I'm just saying. How can that? I've talked to Mike yesterday about we got to get the word out about these organizations like Mike doing awesome things. And thanks for having him on tonight, by the way, Ghost. But if I worked with TriStar, we could mention that in the videos. Hey, not only are they, here's some cool shotguns, but they're doing a lot more than just selling guns, which is awesome.
Absolutely. Well, most people that have watched this channel or been around us for a while. By the way, tomorrow is 5-year anniversaries on YouTube. Tomorrow marks the 5th-year anniversary of our very first video.
Horrible video. Horrible. Go watch it, people. It's awesome.
Terrible video. Literally doing like selfie style. What up? I was like, oh my, I look back and I'm like, what the hell was I doing? And the fact that it got any traction whatsoever is amazing to me. But
still one of your best videos, ain't it?
It's stupid. It is absolutely stupid that thing still gets views and all of that. I wouldn't watch it at all, but some people do. But no. 5 years. So 5 years doing this. I wouldn't have met Mike. I wouldn't have met Clover without this weirdness that is YouTube. And I dog on YouTube or being gun tubers or whatever you want to, content creators, whatever. I dog on us all as a group a lot because we have a lot of faults as a collective. But I will say the cool thing about this community is the community itself. And getting to know people. Some of my closest friends are people that I met through this weirdness that is the internet. So go figure. But one of them is someone I'm proud to call a friend for a long time now. He's been through it all. He's literally been in this industry, whether he wanted to or not, basically his whole life. And then decided to do something crazy a few years ago and founded an organization called Walk the Talk America. Now, most of you guys are watching this or listening to this, and you've been around my channel for at least a little bit, know about Walk the Talk America. But Mike Sidini is the founder, creator, backbone. Man, this guy does so much, and I don't think that our community truly understands exactly what you do. I'm your hype man, bro. I'm your hype man. For sure, because we know what you do and the hustle that it is and the grind and all of that. But first, before I do anything, I want to say thank you for all that you're doing for not just the gun community, but for the mental health community as a whole, because you're bringing the gun community to the bigger picture of mental health, which wasn't there before, much less bringing mental health to the gun community. But Mike Sidini from Walk the Talk America. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Hey, man, thanks for having me. Once again, it's always great to be with you guys.
Yeah, it's always good to have you, man. I know you're tired. I know NRA was probably good and bad. I know that you're not a big fan of those type of events because you're nonstop. You're nonstop every second for a lot of different reasons. You wear a lot of different hats. Before we jump into what's going on right now, there probably are some people out there that might not have heard of Walk the Talk America. I'm going to give you a few minutes and maybe kind of give the elevator speech of bringing bridging that gap between mental health and the gun community that you guys are doing, and why you're doing not only putting out links and all that. So kind of give the elevator speech of Walk Talk America, how you started it and all that.
Okay. Yeah. So we're coming up on 4 years, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. But basically we look for innovative ways to get people to help the need when they're in crisis without fear of consequence, and bridging the gap between the firearms industry and the mental health community, and basically looking for ways that we could work together and educate each other. Right. And that's what's most important, because, when we have these tragic events, which we've had in past 3 weeks, I mean, it really goes on display the fact that people are uneducated, right? Because half these conversations that are happening, these talking points, it's like clearly no one's taking the time to learn about either mental health, or on the flip side of that, they clearly have not learned about the firearms industry. And what we're trying to do is change that. And, unfortunately, when these things die down, which they always do, we're still left with the 67 people a day that take their life with a firearm. And that's a huge number. And not to make light of anything that happens to children or just people minding their business, grocery shopping. You know what I mean? We're not trying to do that, but we're just we want to look for innovative ways and solutions to get people help that will work and make sense, right? Not restriction that we know damn well isn't going to stop anything. It's not going to bring down the negative outcomes of firearms, things like that. So that's really what we are.
Well, and this is something that one of the first things when we first met, I think through Pincus, I think Pincus might have introduced us somehow, some way. But one of the first things you remember when we were talking about what to talk about, it's always stuck with me, is you said, I want people to be able to talk about mental health as if it was a common cold, or it's like put your seatbelt on. And it's like, we have no problem talking about, oh, I've got a cold or the flu. We don't have any problem talking about putting a seatbelt on, and that could help save lives. But when it comes to the mental health, and especially the mental health with a firearm aspect, that's something that is that elephant in the room that no one wants to acknowledge. And the fact that you were willing to literally sell, by the way, so little background on Mike, former owner and families for generations with Eagle Imports, a major importer in the industry, sells it to do this full time. And that's a huge leap. I don't think people quite understand what kind of leap it takes to sell a business and devote your time to mental health. Part of my show every week is on the veteran side, and you and I have worked on a task force with the VA before. But mental health of the veterans is a big thing, but it's not just veterans. It's everyone. My personal thing is, as I come from veterans, is I see more of that. But mental health is not okay. So it's interesting, because this is the line I want to go with, is in our community, when people think mental health, they think one of two things. They think mass murders or PTSD. And those are part of it. But PTSD is not, this huge all-consuming mental health issue. It is a reason why people are having issues, but there's so many aspects of mental health and mental illness and mental wellness that is not PTSD related. And I think that you guys do a good job of getting all of this out. More importantly, bringing the gun community to the mental health side of things. I know that you've worked hard, because when you first got into this, it was difficult, was it not, for you to get those doors open and have meetings with mental health organizations that weren't firearm related? They didn't necessarily want the firearm side involved. And I think that could be huge. Can you talk a little bit about how the struggle started with even getting those meetings to where now they're some of your biggest allies?
Well, yeah, in the beginning, when I first started this, the idea, I really wanted to stop mass shooters, which is kind of funny, because finding the next mass shooter is like finding a needle in a haystack. And it wasn't the gun industry that pushed me back to suicide prevention. It was actually the mental health community that was like, just focus here And it took me a while to wrap my arms around that and understand why. But once I finally did, and just for the listeners who haven't heard this before, it's like the only future predictor of violence is previous violence, not mental health diagnosis. So that became problematic because my original idea was just to try to throw money at the the mental health community to say like, okay, here's the money from us, you fix it. But you talk about getting the doors open, right? And I think what really helped to open up some of those doors for people was when I found out that I couldn't just throw money at it, that we had to look for innovative solutions within the community. It's like, okay, what we can't give legislation, we can't give restriction. Those are non-starters, but what are the things that we can do? We have valuable space, we have trainers, we have gun shops, we have distributors, we have manufacturers. Like, what are the things that we could do that make sense? And I'm telling you, with any argument, when you come with a solution, hey, like we're putting this, mental health flyer on the box, or Arms Corps is putting this, the free and anonymous mental health screenings on the side of their ammo, doors open, because the mental health community has been open to hearing about these things because they're intrigued, right? Because it's something totally different. And I saw, Jake just joined us, and he can expand on that. But when you want to reach somebody, you got to be able to steer them away from their talking points and the things that just are absolute madness. You go around in circles, right? But when you kind of can steer them towards something else and say like, yeah, we're doing this, and they're like, that's kind of fascinating, the doors automatically open. So I think it's helped us a lot. Jake and I, we get contacted all the time by mental health organizations in different states that want us to come speak or be at an event, because it's a different look. You know what I mean? Like everything else is the same old stuff. It's the legislation. And believe it or not, there's a lot of people in the mental health community that understand the same old stuff isn't working. So I think that's a way that we found to really kind of reach people that, and educate them that normally we wouldn't have.
Yeah. And he mentioned Jake, and Jake is, where's once again another good friend we met through this weirdness of internet, but Jake also wears a lot of different hats. So he is not only a board member of Walk the Talk America, he is a licensed clinician. He with family, he's a therapist that has really helped a lot in bridging the gap between literally the mental health side of things and Walk the Talk America. That's his field. So with Zephyr Wellness, man, this guy's got a lot of hats. I want to introduce Jake Discretion, and Jake, I'm going to give you a few minutes. Once again, most of these people know about you, but there are some people that aren't familiar. Kind of give your background real quick, the elevator speech, if you will, and then talk maybe how you and Mike got together with Walk the Talk America.
Yeah, thanks, Trey, and I apologize for being late. One of my biggest achievements is being able to keep track of time zones, because in my head I was like 7 o'clock, got lots of time. No, 7 o'clock Central. I'm in the Pacific. That doesn't work. So thanks for everybody's patience. I was actually installing shelves in my garage. My wife and my 2 boys are out of town. They're visiting her parents, and so this is my opportunity to be manly and do manly things, like put studs into cinder block. And I've been doing that all day, and I'm very proud of the work that I've done, because now I get to grunt like Tim the Toolman Taylor. So thanks for the tee up. Yeah. So by trade, I'm a marriage and family therapist, licensed in Nevada, certified counselor nationally with the National Board for Certified Counselors. And I own and operate a business called Zephyr Wellness. You mentioned that. It's on my t-shirt. So Zephyr Wellness is an outpatient counseling clinic, and we are in Northern Nevada. Mike's in Southern Nevada. We're like 6.5 hours apart, so don't ask if we visit each other frequently. We talk a lot, but so the story about how Mike and I met was, so I've had a podcast called Noggin Notes for several years, and Noggin Notes has been really fun for me. It's a mental health podcast. It started as an app by some guys in Cambodia, and one thing led to another. I knew a guy who knew the guys, and then they linked up, and since 2017, we've had Noggin Notes, and Noggin Notes now has 3 different podcasts. There's mine, which is the OG, and then there's Noggin Notes Africa and Noggin Notes Cambodia. And we're bringing mental well-being to those parts of the world that have never heard of such a thing, because traditionally you just don't talk about emotions in the Orient. So that's pretty cool. And so I had Mike on the show in 2019, and to give a little bit of a background description on how nervous I was as a firearms owning clinician, I told Mike, I said, hey, we can talk about your organization, but I don't want to mention that I own guns on the podcast, because I was so used to the judgmental rhetoric of my own peer community that I didn't know what they would think. And I don't know, there's this weird pressure in the counseling world to like not fall out with your peer colleagues, which is very bizarre because they're not the ones paying your bills. Your customers, your clients, your patients are. So it's like, seems reasonable that I would want to bring in half of America, because roughly half of America owns firearms. And yet my whole counseling community is like poo-pooing firearms owners. And so when I met with Mike, we talked for, I don't know, like 3 hours, and like an hour and a half of that was the podcast. And then after that, we just kept talking about how we were going to save the world. And we became BFFs, and we've been very, very good friends to this day. But what that got me to do was I realized something had to be done in my clinical community with regard to how we view and treat gun owners when they come in for care, if they come in for care. And as we all know, gun owners are a skeptical bunch when it comes to medical treatments broadly, but specifically mental health, for all the reasons we're familiar. And so I decided that we should design cultural competence training courses for clinicians, practitioners, to talk about gun culture. And I thought this would be kind of a cool homework assignment for me too, because even though I've owned guns my whole life, been around my whole life, I grew up in a family full of cops, and we hunted, on and off in the fall. But my dad and my uncles, they had guns as a tool for the job. We didn't play with them. We didn't practice. Yep. We didn't plink. We didn't compete. They just kind of stayed in the closet and collected dust. So when I got involved in designing this curriculum and meeting all the guys and at the various shows that we went to in 2019, I was blown away. And one of the things that I say repeatedly now when I go on other people's podcasts from the mental health community is one stereotype that's completely inaccurate. One myth about the gun community is that we're monolithic. I didn't know the depth and breadth of the diversity that's in the gun community. And so we've tried to work that into the presentation, not just with the people who own firearms, but the uses and utility of firearms broadly. I didn't know. I was ignorant. So now I'm not, and now I'm teaching this stuff, which is kind of cool. But thanks to people like you and some others who have welcomed me in with open arms, I can fully attest that the gun community is really quite friendly. Like, I know there's little clicky things, but I love the gun community. It's awesome. And it's everything you think it would be, and nothing that might be all at the same time. Right. So that's my testimony. I love it.
Well, and let's take that. Let's flip the script. I'm sure there are a lot of people now that are in the gun community that aren't so skeptical about talking with a licensed clinician or therapist, because now you kind of broken the wall down for us to say, there are some gun owning therapists out there. Yeah. And that's something that we could talk about real quick, is now that you're in this kind of dual universe, if you will, of being a therapist and a gun owner, and kind of bridging that, no pun intended, to the motto. That's what you're supposed to be doing. But have you noticed more therapists that are gun owners or pro-gun, or at least open to the discussion of firearms because of your involvement?
So, sort of. I would say that the gun community is overwhelmingly more receptive to therapy than the therapists are to gun community people, which is greatly disappointing to me. I think for, as I say this frequently, like for as much as we hang our hat on non-judgmentalism and being lifelong learners and all that stuff, we're a pretty rigid, judgmental bunch. We really are. We get into our habits and our routines, and we don't care to get out of them, which sucks, and I hate it. But that point aside, yes, the short answer to your question is yes, more people have, sort of come out of the closet like I did. But it's hard. So for as many people who have taken our course, and we're up to over 400 now, who have attended in some form or fashion one of the three parts of our courses, we haven't gotten anybody who wants to clear their throat and raise their hand and come out and say, I want to be listed on your website as someone who gun community people can go to for help. And I think it's just the
a
same
network,
stigma.
if you will, a pro firearm therapist network. That is an unbelievably awesome idea. If we, like you said, if you get people to come out,
we want that.
That's awesome. Because if you get one in every state, almost, I mean, that would be at least someone to have a point of contact.
That's the idea. We keep getting hit up. Mike can attest to this through social media and email and whatnot, saying, for people who never would have considered this 4 years ago, saying, hey, I'm struggling with X. Do you have any resources? And we're like, Psychology Today, which again,
right.
I'll rip on Psychology Today. I reached out to them to add a checkbox of like competencies that you can do, because they got all these things that you're specialized in. I said, hey, put gun friendly on there. I might as well have broken wind in the middle of mass. It was not received. It was like, oh, thanks for your email. And then I followed up twice and radio silence. So it just sucks. But if anybody's listening who is a clinician and is a gun owner, and you're like, well, I don't know if I want to like step out, follow my lead, please. Like, we need you badly, wherever you are. And then contact your gun owning clinician buddies, because I know they're out there. They took our classes. Some of them work for me, and some of them are not afraid, but it's the, how do I do this? Do I entreat, the opportunities that come? I'm already booked. I'm overflowing. It's like, what is this going to look like to my friends or whatever? But dude, if we take the statistics, like half of America either owns a gun or lives with somebody who does. And that goes up depending on geography too. If you're in rural areas or you're in certain states, Nevada, Northern Nevada is probably 70-75%.
Arkansas, we're second in the country behind Alaska at like 77%. I think Alaska's like 83%. Like even the Democrats in Arkansas are gun owners,
You can't afford to be ignorant of the demographic, you know what I mean? Especially when you get somebody coming in. We're a mental health organization, suicide prevention at our core. And if somebody comes in with an angsty teenager or they themselves are struggling, we can't afford to be tiptoeing uncomfortably around the firearms storage conversation. And that's what we're trying to get people competent in, is say reasonably, like, hey, what do we need to do to keep you safe in this time of crisis without restricting your rights, without calling .gov. That's what we want to do. And we need more clinicians.
Before we'll jump into some actual questions from the chat, and then what I have and Clover has. But before we do that, I want to, kind of compound about what you're saying about this, which in my eyes is a beautiful idea of this network. It's almost like, we as a gun community talk about going to businesses that have the no gun sign on their front window. Wouldn't it be awesome to go to a therapist or even a pediatrician or a regular family doctor, anyone that's in the medical field that has like a gun with a circle saying, bring it on. We're gun friendly around here. That could be amazing. Because here's the thing, this is just me from the outside looking in, and I'm not even in close to your world, either one of you, but we'll talk about what happened in Texas as an example in different places. Once again, the mental health cries come from that side of, well, this person maybe blah, 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 the red flag laws that are coming out from the mental health. And I might be off base here. You guys can correct me, but if the mental health side of things is going to get blamed for some of these issues, then I find it hard to believe that the mental health community doesn't want to fix that, if for no other reason to quit being blamed. I don't. Am I crazy? Am I missing something here?
I wish the logic worked that way.
I know.
There's so much that people will sacrifice for the sake of their own politics or their ego. And what's maddening about the last 2 weeks since Uvalde happened specifically, is I'm pretty active on Twitter, and I engaged myself in, I don't even know how many threads at this point, dropping in WTTA stuff, comments about we are in the middle, we're doing something, we're trying to. I'm the cynical part of me says nobody wants to solve it because they're so invested in their own narrative and doubling down on that and the blame because it's just easier. I don't know how much work is going to get done. Now, the optimistic side says that a whole bunch of people reach out and they say, thanks for doing what you're doing. So like I get a little black pilled from time to time where I'm like, ooh, I don't even know if our work matters. Because I just see so much overwhelming. Yeah. Like the binary nature of the two sides. Right. But one of the physician guys that I talk to pretty frequently, his frustration is like, look, forever, the healthcare community was banging on the gun community to do something, and the gun community just dug its heels in and said, pray for my cold dead hands. They wouldn't even come to the table. And the gun community has never advocated for expansive mental health care or healthcare broadly. I was like, that's a really good point. You've never heard, NRA or 2AO being like, what we need? We need lower copays. That's a great place to start. Is like, let's get some of these manufacturers, maybe, or these associations to start advocating for better healthcare coverage. That doesn't require raising taxes. There's lots of policy things that we could do. That it was just a point that I'd never considered before. And yeah, you're not off base.
Well, and it's like I said, it's just one of those things where sometimes the simple explanation isn't as simple as people think. And it's one of those things where the simple explanation is if you're going to complain about mental health being blamed, then do something about it.
I don't think anybody takes it personally is the thing. I think we hear that and we just go, somebody else's problem. Meanwhile, people like me are busy. We're fat, dumb, and happy in our clinics. We don't look at ourselves as part of the solution. And if we ever did, it would mean lots and lots of sacrifice and hours like Mike and I are putting in, away from our families, deep in the evenings. And producing podcasts. Who wants to do that?
Ghost, that is exactly why I did what I did. Because I got tired of hearing that we were bad as the gun people. So I was like, all right, like we'll do something. And it's proven to be true, because there hasn't been a moment where I haven't shown somebody that's either anti-gun or gun neutral or pro-gun what we do, and all three of them go, that's really cool. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So
when you have the ability to touch all three segments, it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. But I'll be the first one to tell you, like, you're saying that you think they would think like that, and I did think like that, so you would think they would think like that. Stop blaming us. But that goes back to what I was saying. Like, do you want to just point out problems, or you want to provide solutions? It doesn't have to be the smartest solution in the universe.
It only takes something to get the ball rolling. And if someone else picks up that ball and takes it a little bit further, gives it to someone else, and they take a little bit further, instead of one person trying to push, or two people or 10 people trying to push this boulder the whole way, it's, hey, I need 10 people to push it a foot, and then I got 10 more people, it's got the next foot. And that's in my eyes, that's the way it should work. And maybe I'm naive, maybe I'm just overzealous to think that, why wouldn't they want to get involved with this? I don't know. Clove, I want to bring you in before we start. I got some questions that I want to ask. There's questions out there in the chat we'll get to. Obviously, Jake and Mike as well, very well. Do you have anything that you want to ask or bring up before we go to some more questions?
Yeah, I'm curious. Jake, I hear you talking, and you're talking about, if you get, a large percentage of, those gun owners that are skeptical coming into clinics, talking about more time for you guys. So how do I put this? Is there a lack of mental health professionals out there in the country right now? Is that one of the things that you're saying?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I'm in Nevada, where we're dead last in behavioral health in the country, and have been for many years. Mm-hmm. And that's by a ranking the states report that Mental Health America puts out every year. Mental Health America powers our free and anonymous mental health screenings on the WTTA website. But Nevada's dead last. We're dead last in children's mental health too. So, but it's countrywide, and I'll give a little description of how what I think has transpired has affected everybody. So, for years and years and years, it was hide mental illness in the dark, right? It's this weird, spooky thing nobody can wrap their arms around because it's not tangible. You can't point to like the way that you can point to a bloody finger when you scrape it or something. So it was weird and spooky, and some people thought it was of the occult. And the psychiatrists and psychologists of yesteryear were regarded as weirdos. And so we fast forward through the 70s, 80s, 90s. Starts to get a little more traction, gets a little more popular. People like, Fraser Crane, the character on Cheers, and then Fraser sort of pushed it into the light a little bit. And then he gets more pop culture mentioning it and whatnot. But it's still, we as the practitioners still held ourselves in the dark. We lived in the shadows. And I'll give you an example of one of the ways we did that in graduate school. And so I went to grad school 12, 14 years ago. And that's not ancient history. They're still teaching that you don't acknowledge your patients in public. It's like, what? That is how we get stigmatized. When we treat our patients as weirdos, they don't want to come in because they think they're weirdos. My orthopedist doesn't do that. My dentist doesn't do that. My financial advisor goes golfing with me. They all handle private, sensitive information. Why are we different? Well, it's because we took this role and we made more of it than it should have been made. And so we were like, we're extra special. And there's lots and lots of little anecdotes that I could tell, but it's literally getting taught in the graduate schools, hide in the shadows. For example, when I was talking about having a podcast and going on social media years ago, I was told, don't do that. That could be considered treating without consent. It's like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard from somebody who authored a book, like Professor so-and-so, who literally has a book. And it's like, how is that not treatment without consent? So anyway, that goes on. Now we've gone in the last 2 years, especially, but I'd say probably 5 to 7 years, we've gone from nobody talks about mental illness and mental health care to everybody has a mental illness and everybody's got trauma. And oh, by the way, because of the chasm that we've created, or the gap, the void, if you will, that my people created, somebody had to fill that market demand. And guess who it was? It was these online mega teletherapy companies who don't do it the right way, absolutely screwed everybody over, and are now presenting counseling as something that it is not, which is brief, distant, instant success. And it's not that at all. It's never been that. And we just chucked 100 years worth of research and evidence out the window because people wanted to get paid. And so that's happening. And what it's caused is a way larger market demand for the services than we have providers available. So yes, we're short of providers, and the providers we have are not very good. And there's this insecurity in my field where, like, I don't want to heal you too much because you might disappear from my calendar, and I'm insecure that maybe you won't fill that appointment. It's like, sure. I do the exact opposite with my company. I try to tell everybody, like, get them in, get them treated better, deeper,
and
faster.
Hope you don't have to see them. Yeah.
Yeah.
It might not be a great business model, but it's great for.
I want to work myself out of a job, Trey. Like,
right. Yeah.
Chris knows
I love that. I love that. I love the fact that you bring that up, because that is something that's a real thing, for real. That is a real thing. Not saying you, but that is. I mean,
yeah. Yeah. So, there's skepticism based on just, will it even work? If I go to counseling, will I even get better? Or am I going to be stuck at Tuesday at 4 p.m. in perpetuity because the dude needs to make money? It's like, man, if you're a decently functioning human being, it doesn't matter what you're dealing with. 8 to 12 appointments is a lot. Like, that's a lot. You should be pretty much cured if you're going once every 2 weeks for half a year. Outside of massive
at least have a game plan towards getting, the game plan or the strategy of getting better. You should you should at least have the idea of what's going to take. I want to let Mike and Jake Clover jump in on this as well. I love Calaveras. He's out there in California, but he says gun owners don't equal pro-gun. He does not trust doctors with that info. And I think, Jake, that's kind of what you're talking about, and Mike as well. There is still a lot of that distrust in the medical field from gun owners.
Yeah, that's
I would, and that's the tough part, right? Because there's anecdotally, we can point towards examples where people have been screwed over, especially like in the state of New York.
Yeah. Right.
But in defense of some doctors and some clinicians, because I've watched them work through this when they're in our course. Sometimes they just don't know how to approach the situation. And I get it. It's like super scary when someone's just like, do you own guns? It's like, why the hell are you asking me that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, and how does that apply to my broken arm? And it
some truth to
seems,
that.
and this is exactly why we're doing what we're doing, right? Because we want to train the people that are the good people to understand, like, there's a way to talk to us. There's a way to say, this is about an action plan as opposed to, the scary. I don't blame anybody for lying when someone asks them flat out, do you own guns?
Yeah, I understand. Clove, you got a follow up, do you not?
Yeah, I mean, with the shortage, Jake, I mean, if there's young people out there, folks looking for a career change, whatever the case may be, right? What is the minimum, like, requirement level of education? What you've got to do to get into the professional level to be able to work in the mental health arena?
Well, to have a license to do what I do, which is bill insurance and do counseling, it's generally a master's degree. You can get a doctoral degree and become a psychologist. Psychologists these days don't do a lot of therapy; they do more psychometric testing, functional stuff. Psychiatry, which is your MD, but specializes in psychiatric stuff. That's a medical degree. So 4 years beyond college, plus a residency, plus a fellowship.
Psychiatrists are the ones that can prescribe.
Correct. Okay. Yeah. So real quickly, the difference for the audience: medical doctor prescribes medicine. They're psychiatrists. Psychologists are generally doctoral degree. Not every state requires that. For example, Samantha Mann, who is a gun owner, positive 2A person, writes for NRA Women. She's a psychologist in West Virginia, has a master's degree. Nevada requires a doctoral. Then you got clinical social worker, marriage and family therapist, professional counselor. Those are all master's level. And then you have alcohol and drug counselors, which can be bachelor's or master's level. So below that, there's like peer supporters, generally no degree required. Sometimes bachelor's helps. But what we're trying to get is more like community-based mental health workers who don't need to go the full length of school, because I happen to think that, humanity made it this far over 40,000 years or so in its current iteration without my profession. I think we probably do it without us. So maybe we need to start pushing down the talent and education and training to people who don't necessarily need the graduate degree. And then we can help. The problem is we have associations who have protections against that. They want to fill their egos and make money or whatever. So there's a little bit of a struggle, but I think it's overwhelmingly obvious at this point that we need more help. But that's basically the sketch outline. And usually the higher on the ladder you go, the higher pay you get too. Well, so peer support doesn't get very much.
Yeah, but then you've got, I think part of what you're talking about is almost like a guerrilla warfare style move where, I mean, we need to be better community leaders, neighbors, friends, family members.
Better listeners to begin with.
Yeah.
Be the soldiers on the street.
Yeah.
Well, that's why I teach this stuff. That's why I put out emotional functioning videos, because I want people to have this information that I obtained without having to go through the rigmarole and incur a bunch of student loan debt, and apply it in your own life. Like, stay out of my clinic. We can lean on our friends and neighbors to solve our problems. Every once in a while, you need to level up to professional psychotherapy, just like you need to level up to a professional auto mechanic sometimes. But generally, like I was putting up shelves today. I didn't need to hire a contractor to do that. YouTube video and I got it done. So if we can do that with our mental well-being, great.
Awesome. Gonna field some questions. This can be for Mike and for Jake, whichever one. From G-Webs, you got a couple that we're going to bring up. Is there anything that can be done for groups of people who are experiencing something stressful together? Would that be in the scope of Walk the Talk America? Now, I don't know what he means by groups of people. I'm thinking it may be, I don't know if he means like a group of people like veterans as a community, or does he mean, let's take Uvalde, a group of people that are in Texas right now that are grieving or struggling, experiencing stress together. I don't know what he means, but let's just take as an example of a Facebook group of people that have found each other, that are trying to help each other deal with stressful situations. And I'm going to use this as an example. Is that something that Walk the Talk America would be involved with, or what?
Well, we got a lot on our plate. That's a good idea. So I'll just say that.
No, I hear you.
It's not that we couldn't do it. I think that's a great idea, where we could see. My mind's turning now toward, like you mentioned, Facebook, and that's exactly where I went. Is people get together, they form their own communities for whatever reasons, and then they go out and meet in person, hopefully, when we're not locked down by stupid people. And you have, beers down at the sports bar to talk about your commonality, whatever that may be, whether it's Giants fandom or, recent divorces or whatever it is. And I think that that's a useful tool. I don't know why Walk the Talk couldn't facilitate that through its own website. It would take, some build out, obviously more money because we don't have that, and websites take money and group chats and all that stuff. But I think that'd be kind of a cool thing for gun owners to know that they're in at least similar company when discussing
place,
things.
if you will.
Yeah. That word's been, or that phrase has been beaten up a little bit, but it truly, like, it's a trustworthy environment where you're not going to get snitched or whatever.
Absolutely.
That's a cool idea.
Yeah.
Mike,
this will go to Mike, because this will be something that over your 4 years, Mike, he says, has Walk the Talk America had any new revelations or ideas with the recent session of anti-gun owner political pressure? And he's talking about, because there's a lot of new gun owners in the last few years that are experiencing the pressure that we're on every time that there's a mass murder out there. A lot of these new gun owners are experiencing the attack, if you will, against gun owners through media and the political process. Have you, Mike, been in contact with any of these newer gun owners, maybe at NRAM or something like that, that are kind of wondering why this happens?
I'm not getting emails like that. Once again, it's when these things happen and you hear, I think Jake goes through this too, because I see you on Twitter, and then like guys like Eddie Davenport, people that are like really involved in WTTA. It's like when we see these things, we realize that most people are talking, they either chose not to be educated on a subject, like say like a David Hogg, right? Like there ain't no damn way that he's just managed to make it this far without, he's purposely not trying to learn, right? Like sure. I'm just going to stick my head down and just move forward and not educate myself. So, I don't really get the new gun owner. I would say that's probably more for the organizations, right?
I
like
think so too,
probably the people that are a part of, like, say, Liberal Gun Club or Liberal Gun Owners or Armed, you know what I mean? Like,
only
I feel
thing
like
that
there's so many different networks for current gun owners that get it.
Yeah. The only thing that I could think that might be an interesting thing is after 2 weeks ago and Buffalo and some other things, when mental health and mental illness has been thrown around to validate restrictions on our rights, or the proposal of restrictions on our rights because of this, using red flag laws, if you will. Maybe the newer gun owners are going through that. They're like, oh, wow, they never understood why we get upset as a community when we hear about gun deaths, and why we're so quick to react, good or bad. And this is an argument that can happen, that our initial reaction, but 2/3 of those are suicide. Hold on. Like, I get that that's a defensive mechanism that our community and our industry has, is, hey, not all of those gun deaths are legitimate. Only 2/3, only 1/3, because 2/3 of those are suicide. The fact that we as a community don't even acknowledge sometimes the 2/3 is scary. And I think that they've come up ways that they're starting to acknowledge, and folks like you two are saying, this is one of the reasons why, if we can cut that number down so far, then we don't have to use that argument. But it still is, to me, a little upsetting when the 2/3 is almost dismissed because it's not a right number. It's not a correct number. 2/3 of those are suicide. Homie, any life that's gone via a firearm, doesn't matter if it's suicide or not. Just because it was suicide and no one else was hurt, that makes it irrelevant.
Right.
And that's where I think that we haven't grown,
Jake, I remember you said something so awesome one time, and I use it all the time. What is your threshold for death?
Right.
Like, it's
that's what we're debating, right?
yeah.
Because, and I think I actually stole that from Pincus, because he was talking about magazine capacity limits, and he made a great point. You could feel the energy shift in the room during one of our trainings when he said, "How many bullets does it take to take a life?" And it was like, he's holding one. And it's like, so what's the magazine capacity that is going to be acceptable? Now we're debating level of death acceptability, right? And so I have an article coming out shortly, and I'll share it with you guys later, and we'll probably even post to the website about how there's new thought among multiple people about how suicide turned outward is mass murder. It's you're so displeased with yourself, you can't just take your own life. You got to take somebody else out with you, if not multiple people. And so, how do you not conclude that mental illness is a part of that? And people in my community who don't want to acknowledge that that's a part of it that could be addressed through social programming, all sorts of different policies that don't have anything to do with guns. They don't want to move off the gun thing because it's tangible. It's easy to point to the gun and say, just control that, right? Yeah. It's hard. Longitudinal effort, long-term goals. Like 20 years from now, our goal is to reduce suicides by 40%. Like, who's good? What politician is going to campaign on that? That doesn't fill the coffers between election cycles. So the other hard part too is if you're really all about like getting rid of guns, David Hogg, stop marching for our lives and go repeal the Second Amendment. Oh, except you need 75% of state legislatures to do that, and that'll never happen. So what they do is this mealy mouth, middle ground, like we're just going to restrict some things because it's not about restricting guns. It's not about gun control, because if it were, they'd go with a full boat. It's about feeding their own egos, putting money in their bank accounts, and winning the next election and pandering to the base. It's like, it's so ridiculous. And both sides of the political spectrum do it. What are we doing? We're walking in the middle where the hard work is done. It's like, no wonder nobody wants to join us. It's hard. And you get eggs thrown at you from both sides.
Yeah. If you ever want to really like, this is what I've been doing lately on Twitter, because I just pick my shots. Like, I don't try to get, but it's really funny because like I have this one thing that ends the conversation every single time when someone says like ban ARs or do this. And I'm like, okay, after you get through the ban, what are you going to do for the kid? Or what are you going to do for the person who's troubled? And it's funny because no one will answer it.
Because once you take the school away, the threat doesn't go away.
Right.
The base reason for this happening doesn't go away, guys.
Yeah, and that's why I think it's political point scoring and whatever you want to call it, virtue signaling to say root cause mitigation. Yeah, well, root cause mitigation takes a lot of effort and sacrifice, time, resources, and commitment, and political will. It's way easier just be like, 10 rounds. It's like, okay, well, let's pretend we may wave the magic wand and we get rid of all homicides. A lot
better too.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, all homicides. You still got 24,000 deaths a year by suicide. But like to my earlier point, if I didn't make that strong enough, if we go address people's well-being in the individual, it will ripple through society. In the family, it will ripple through the community. You address individual well-being, you get people healed and healthy. Yeah, we'll stop some suicides. We'll get some people some help along the way, but we're also going to catch some of those mass shooters. We're also going to catch some of those homicide perpetrators. And you can't quantify it, unfortunately. That's not a thing that goes on a placard, So
well, and how many families do you keep intact? How many, right?
Yep.
The societal repercussions or benefits or whatever you want to say, because benefits
you can't quantify that.
How many marriages are healed? How many marriages are saved? How many kids don't drop out of school?
Yeah.
How many chronic truancies are solved? Yep. All the things that lead to the thing. But I read about this in the article, but I'll share it with the audience. Clinically, what we do when somebody walks into the door, I go, "Hi, I'm Jake. Nice to meet you. What brings you in today?" And Ghost says, "Hi, I'm Ghost. What brings me in today is struggling with anxiety or whatever." Okay, now we've got a problem. Okay, so that's the top of the hierarchy there. Beneath that problem, we have to set a goal. What do you want, Ghost? And he says, "Well, I'd like less anxiety." All right, how much less? 40% less. However we quantify that, right? Okay, now we have a goal. Now we got objectives to the goal. And it'd be something like, all right, you're going to meditate twice a day. You're going to learn how your emotions function. You're going to learn to self-validate. Cool. And then we do an intervention. The intervention may look like shutting off the screen for 2 hours or something, or it may look like going on a camping trip once every 2 weeks or whatever, right? That's the intervention. Here's the problem we got with society's public health, et cetera, because this happened with COVID too. We have a problem, and then we jump straight to the intervention. We don't know if that's necessarily going to work. We have no idea how to monitor whether or not it is. And it's the same thing with this guns and mental health stuff. It's like, well, what's the problem? Too many firearm deaths. Great. What's the goal? Reduce them. What are the objectives? How will we know? They should be time limited and measurable. Then we go to the intervention. The intervention just supersedes everything, and we're like, I guess we'll figure it out as we go. It's like, that's not how you do things. Not in my world anyway.
Yeah. Real quick, Mandatory Carry says, are super chats going to the guests tonight? Yes. We do not ask for, nor do we encourage them. Tonight we are. Every dime, every cent, every penny that super chats go are going to go being donated to Walk the Talk America. So yes, 100%. So get your wallets out. And if you're ever going to send me a super chat, usually we send it to care packages downrange. Tonight, every cent is going to go, including the part that YouTube takes from it. I'll cover that. Is all going. So get your wallets out, and if you're ever going to spend money, tonight's the night. So yeah, I want to go real quick because we actually, let me go back up here because we did have a super chat, and it was Mandatory Carry, sent $6. So all of you guys out there, go ahead and if you're interested, super chat. It's all going to go to Walk Talk America, and we won't ask where it goes, Mike. We know that you've got so many different revenue streams that have to go to so many different places. That's an inside joke. Just an inside joke between Mike and I. So, but yeah, anyways,
you mind if I jump in? I saw a question here I want to ask real quick.
Yeah, go for it.
Can you be a psychologist and a psychiatrist at the same time? Yes, you can.
Okay.
You can be both.
Let's see here real
Thank
quick.
you
And I'm
for
going to
everybody
show
that's
yeah, Clover, I
chatting.
appreciate you. $10 I think Mike is sexy and always gives the best man hugs. This
I'm a
dude
hugger.
is like a professional fucking model. So yeah, he is sexy.
Literally a male model.
Literally like the Bugle Boy kid, right? And I know you've got, there it is, the blue steel. Let's see it.
I think you remember the magnets you gave out at like SHOT Show or something.
Oh, that was a few years ago.
Remember
Oh my
those?
God.
So,
It was he had the like New Kids in the Block look. I mean, it was like, yeah.
I think
Yeah,
I think it's still on my fridge. And it was there forever.
I
from
would
my
go
wife.
to people's houses and I would leave those magnets on their fridge and literally like get a call about an hour after I left, and they're like, "Dude,
I don't know how long it was there for my wife recognized it. She's like, "Who is that?" I said, "Look at it really good. You know who that is." She was like, "Oh."
The two greatest things that have come out of like SHOT Show are that one and then Big Tony Simon's Lovatron, him in the hot tub.
Yeah,
Those
I was going to say,
those will never be passed. Those will never ever be surpassed.
Mike actually used to do professional photo shoots in bathtubs in a non-ironic way. So,
Rod out there, Aegis Gun Care, $50. Let's go, people. Thank you, Rod. $70 from G23. Mike's an amazing person to interview. He's even a better person to like know. It's really kind of a cool thing. $20 from Tactical FUD. Here we go.
you guys rule.
So keep them on coming. I appreciate you guys. I usually don't ask for them, but tonight I'm going to ask for them. So there's a point that Clover and I talk about pretty frequently, and we talked about it not too long ago for obvious reasons.
We can't do that live on the air. Come on, man.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. But you know, and it's one of those things where and I made a statement, and I don't know if I'm right or not. In my mind, I'm always right, but I also hear voices. So what does that have to say about me? But I want to bring Jake in, and from a clinical thing side of things, my stance is this in a very broad way, but anytime a human being takes another life, another human life, whether it's war, whether it's self-defense, whether it's just madness, whatever it is, it's not a natural act. So am I off base at saying anytime another human being takes another human life, even if it's just for that split second, they're not in their right mental mind because it is not a natural act?
How much time you got?
Well, we can go as long as you want, bro.
So it's interesting. So thanks, Clover, for posting that. So those are the emotional functioning videos. I don't know if that's able to be copied and pasted, but if you go to Zephyr Wellness and just type in emotional functioning, you'll see the videos. Contempt is one of our 10 core emotions. And contempt, as identified by this guy, Carol Izzard, whose work I cite when I teach this stuff, is, let me back up. All 10 emotions are useful for interpreting what the environment is doing. Okay, so they all serve a purpose. They're neither good nor bad. They just are. Now, they have reasons, and the reason that we have contempt is, so Izzard says, is for things like war and defense and conquering. So you can have disagreements about the purpose of those. That's fine, but that's the emotion that we use when we inflict harm upon others. And so goes the theory. It's really hard to hurt somebody unless you think they're not like you. So contempt is like looking down on somebody, like they're different, they're separate, and they're lesser than. So if somebody comes and attacks,
which is not always a good thing or a bad thing. It depends on which way it goes. Yeah.
It's just a thing, and how we interpret that based on belief systems and all that stuff can be debated. But the point is, that's the emotion out of which we act when we inflict harm, pain, death. So it could be a person, it could be a nation, it could be a tribe, whatever. So if you're attacked, you're going to fight back because you have this self-preservation instinct that says, holy crap, they're coming after me. I need to live, not necessarily them. I hope they do too, probably, if you're a reasonable human being, and we don't just go killing people capriciously. But at the end of the day, you go home is the thought, right? Who knows what happens to them? And it's that contempt emotion that drives that. So now from contempt, we can say, are you in your right mind? Well, that begets a deeper philosophical discussion about what are we doing on the planet, right? How are we supposed to be living in harmony with each other? If the species is to continue, we would all want to kind of stifle that emotion of contempt and choose something like, gratitude and great and like graciousness and service to others and that kind of thing. Those are acts, not emotions, but joy and excitement, that sort of thing, instead of hating people. So to answer your question, anytime you kill something, yeah, I would say that's true. I mean, if you take a life, whether it's a fly that's buzzing around my kitchen right now, or another human being, you're looking down on that thing like it's lesser than you. Otherwise, you wouldn't kill it, right? It doesn't matter the justification. It doesn't matter if it's a poisonous fly that's going to eat you or whatever. You want to live. And out of that emotion of contempt, it's lesser than I deserve to live. I will move on. That's what happens. That's the simplest way I could do it without writing a book about it. But if you wanted a good book, I would recommend.
Write a book.
Yeah. All my free time. I got shelves to hang, man. I got hedges to trim. The kids and the wife come back in 6 days. So it's called Facing Evil, Light at the Core of Darkness. And if you give me a minute, I'll pull up the author. But it's kind of a hard book to find, but it's super good because it's a bunch of collected essays by psychiatrists and psychologists and philosophers from yesteryear.
Awesome. Clove, anything that you want to bring up or ask real quick?
No, I put out when Jake was talking about that, I think hunters go through a lot of different range of emotions. They understand the value of life and death and taking a life and that sort of thing. Because it's different. I mean, it's different when I'm shooting a pig in the face because he's tearing up a pasture, or they are. Let's be honest. There's no he or she. It's they are tearing up a pasture and causing horses to break their leg or whatever it might be, damaging crops. And you're going to shoot them in the face, and you're going to just leave them there for the circle of life, or the buzzards, or the coyotes, which you'll probably shoot those in the face too, because those take out the baby calves, right? And so that's a totally different feeling than the deer. And you're going to take the deer home and eat the deer, but there's a different set of feelings for that, right? It's just a different thing. It's like the deer is not causing a nuisance, right? The deer is not causing problems for the environment, get where I'm going with this. And so it's a completely different thing. It's like, man, it's beautiful. Bang. Okay, now I got to clean the thing and poor deer, and then you eat it, and you're like, man, this is good. It's like, thank you, deer. This is awesome.
Yeah, I would actually argue that the same principle remains true. The nuisance of the deer, if you can put it in air quotes for those who aren't watching on YouTube, the nuisance is that you're hungry and you're going to live.
Right? Yeah, and it could be nuisance.
Or you're cold. You could utilize that deer for justify
clothing.
Justification, Yeah, sure.
So when you're talking about hunting, game animals are regulated for a reason. They're regulated because they need to be regulated. If there was no hunting and the deer population exploded, you wouldn't have crops.
Right.
So that has to be managed in a certain way. It's a little bit more disconnected because it's not my crops, right? It's not.
Yeah, I was thinking more, I guess, anarchist, esoteric. Like, let's pretend there is no governance. Let's pretend there is no wildland management. Like, the species are going to figure it out, right? Like,
the nuisance is
deer population goes up, crop population, wolf population goes up, rabbit population goes down, right? So,
survival of the fittest. Yeah.
That's a big criticism from leftists, right? Is like humans are destroying the planet because we're greedy and fat and stupid, and it's like, I kind of agree with that. Like we're not being good stewards of our environment often.
No, G-Webs out there says good points, Jake. Would you think that all the therapy? What's up?
I was just saying thanks. Ding.
Oh yeah, ding. Point for Jake. Cough clap. He said, would you think that all the therapists right now would be stepping in to say, you can just take away one dangerous item and solve anything? This is a mass delusion. I think you touched on that when we talked about the tool. Regardless of what that tool is, at this point, it's an AR or it's this or that. It could be this. It could be cars, whatever that tool could be. Yeah, do you see that? I mean, what is he saying? Is that a mass delusion by the masses of therapists?
Yeah, no, it's not a mass delusion. It's more of an individual lack of desire to evolve and care. And I would say this to anybody's face this isn't just me spitting on a podcast. Like my clinical community here in town, I would challenge them and say, you don't understand gun culture if that's your solution. You don't understand guns. You don't understand gun culture. Okay, take my class. And they won't. And why won't they? That's the question. Why won't they? And why are they clinging to this belief that it's just the thing? And I think it goes back to the instant gratification and the feel good messaging of, well, we did something. It's like you did something that didn't make a difference. That's the problem. And to get out of that box requires not just, working. You don't have to pitch in and actually help Walk the Talk America. You can change your mind, but changing your mind means that you got to let go of previously held beliefs. And sometimes those previously held beliefs are conflated with identity. So if you have long held a belief and now some new information comes in and says, maybe you need to question that belief, it's really hard to let go because you've confused what you think with who you are. And so therefore to change your mind is to change who you are at your character. And it's like, people just aren't interested in doing that. So they don't, and I also don't think they're interested in solving the problem. I really don't. If they were, they would do something other than the low-hanging fruit of political theater.
Yep. Yeah. Unfortunately, though, Jake, I'm starting to believe that the gun industry, not the people on this podcast or any of the listeners, I'm talking about the industry doesn't want to solve it either. So, unfortunately,
there's a lot of ego there. Same ego, same belief system, same, camel's nose in the tent, give them an inch. It's like, who is them? Us? Me? You're talking about me right now? You don't want to put the Walk the Talk America free and anonymous mental health screenings link on your box of ammo, CCI, or whoever you are, because
on your website.
You think that what? You think that the congressional representative who's already out to get you is now going to use that against you? Like, how does this work? Like, Riddle me through the conclusion here on this logic trip, because it doesn't make sense. And I just think they're not interested because it's hard work. It's hard work to change one's mind when you've held the belief for 25 years or whatever it is. It's like, nope. Can't go there. Can't go.
I'm literally at the NRA show and I'm meeting with all these companies, and I don't want to throw names out there yet because I'm still having follow-up meetings, but I'm like, hey, all these people are going to get named in lawsuits now, right? You're going to see it now because the precedent has been set since the insurance companies for Remington decided to settle. Everyone's going to get sued. And
especially there's a couple big companies that are publicly traded companies.
Right.
This is going to be an issue that people don't even think about. The publicly traded issues. How many of these shareholders are going to go to Ruger, Smith and Wesson and say, "What the hell are you doing in the AR game?" You know?
Yeah. Well, so in Ruger's defense, they saw me walking in the hallway and they're like, "Sidini, get over here!" Like, so that's they're like they're trying to get ahead of it. But
no, I'm saying is their shareholders. That's
right.
a publicly traded company. At what point do you have to listen to your shareholders?
Well, exactly. They have shareholders that are anti-gun, which is really funny. Yeah. So but like for me to have to explain to a company that you could use the fact that you give every one of your customers the opportunity to seek help before they do something horrific. You can demonstrate that in court. You can hold up whatever it is, the card, whatever it is you do, right? Like it doesn't even, let's take WTTA out of it. Let's just say like we have free and anonymous mental health screenings in the boxes of our firearms for all of our customers so that they can get help before what we call stage 4, right? Nobody should go get help at stage 4. They need to go at stage 1 because stage 4 is like so late. Ladies and gentlemen of the court, right? We're doing this. I think that would go a long way. It might not win you your court battle, but once again, like, why do I have to explain this to gun companies and they just sit there like meerkats?
Yeah.
Are you stupid? Oh, maybe you are. You know what I mean? Maybe you're so set in your ways that you are. But just to not play chess and think forward or look down the field or whatever analogy, whatever, it's like, I don't understand why it's that difficult. And if it's not WTTA, then do it with somebody else. Like figure it out a way to be better.
Absolutely. 100%. By the way, I've been putting the links out there, the free and anonymous screening, walkthetalkamerica.org/love.
Hey, I want to ask you guys something. I'm going to flip this around and play podcast host.
Absolutely.
You guys been in the gun community a lot longer than I have. And I'm curious, how much of it is just a machismo? How much of it is just, I don't want to admit weakness and I don't want my customers to think I, as a company, am weak? Like, how much of it is that?
I think, and I'll let Clover talk about this as well. To me, I think there's several factors. One of it is ego. Not admitting that there's a problem, whether it's at a personal or at an industry or company level. It's easier to ignore than it is, like Mike says, to actually work hard and fix something. I think a lot of it comes down to, on a personal level, admitting that there's a problem means automatically weakness. Mm-hmm. And the gun industry is full of egos and badasses and, hard guys that are just, salt of the earth, and God forbid that we actually have problems. I'll tell you this much, on the veteran side, that is probably one of the big, I'm sure Jake and Mike, you both know this, but that is probably the biggest problem with veterans not seeking help, is the actual two things. One, the actual admitting that there's a problem. Okay. Most warriors don't want to admit that something's off. They're less of a man, if you will. I think a lot of it too is ignorance to the situation. And this is not just on the veteran level. This is at any level. You don't know what you don't know. And there are people, and Jake, you can probably back me up on this. There are many people, whether a veteran or not, that are suffering from mental illness that don't realize it.
Yeah.
They don't understand. They don't see that their entire personality has changed, that everything that they know to be true is much different in the eyes of their family that see it every day. And we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but there are things, if you're out there and you see a loved one, a friend, anyone that's personalities have completely changed, say something, because they may not understand that their personalities have changed. They may think that everything's just hunky-dory and nothing's changed, when they may not realize they're not sleeping in 4 days. They may not realize that they're grouchy every time someone even tries to talk to them. They may not understand that every time a horn goes off, they freak out. They don't understand that. They don't see that. But to answer your question, I think a lot of it is it doesn't exist if we don't talk about it. And I think that it's much easier for people to just dismiss it than to, as Mike would say, fight for something. Be willing to take your time, your money, your effort into doing something to help. So it's a lot easier to say, well, if I just ignore it, someone else will pick up the ball. Man, that ball's been stable for a long time. Clover, what would you say to Jake?
I think when we're talking about, Mike and I had some of this conversation, I think, yesterday.
Yeah.
I think where we're talking about the general public, I think that you kind of talked about the taboo-ness of it and all that. And I think that plays a role. I think there also is a certain element of it's not my problem. And I think there's a lot of that. I mean, how many people, it's tough, man. I mean, how many people walk by a homeless guy or, do anything, and it's not my problem. And I get that. It's not my problem either.
To be him. Yep.
But, like I don't have the means to lift somebody out of poverty, but at least I can be nice. So maybe when I walk by, at least I, hey man, how's it going? Or, maybe compliment something, or maybe, I don't know, find something, right? To maybe some positivity. And that's where I'm going with this is people are drawn to the train wreck. They're drawn to the negativity. I don't know what it is. Jake would be better suited to telling me than I with humanity, and they'd rather watch the nasty, gory train wreck than they had watched their kids at the Sadie Hawkins dance, or you get what I'm saying, the blue ribbon ceremonies at the county fair. And so that bleeds over into a bigger issue I've got, which is, you talked about contempt earlier. Ooh, the contempt runs deep when we talk about that. I talk about this especially. And it goes to the people. And not really the people out there that's listening to this live or probably in replay, because they've heard me say this before. But the vast majority of people like that negativity. They want the gloom and doom. They want the skies falling. They want that validation that their feelings, right, of whatever it might be, they're validated, right, in a negative way, I think. And so you have these media sources, be it YouTubers, be it whatever. And the biggest problem I've got is with a lot of the big YouTubers. And they put out a thing. We all know the bipartisan legislation that the Republicans and the Democrats are working on at the national level now. G-Web's mentioned something about that, how you guys are poised to help, with that sort of thing. And I think you are, but we've got to get people knowing what WTTA is. We got to get people aware of what you guys bring to the table, right? And we don't do that on my channel. We don't do that on Ghost Channel near as effectively as we can do it on channels with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of eyes, right? But here's the problem. They put out a video talking about the bipartisan legislation in which they mention mental health 5 dozen freaking times with that legislation. And they never once talk about the 4 years that you guys have put into trying to make the difference in that area, in that arena, right? Now, are they doing it because that's something positive and they want to play on what all the viewers and listeners out there want, I think that's probably more so the case than they're ignorant of who you are. And the reason I say that is I could reach out to them and say, hey, why don't you guys, whenever you're talking about legislation, whether it be Walk the Talk America or whether they're covering something with legislation that maybe one of the women from the DC Project has testified on in front of Congress, right? You've got these organizations that need a big positive spotlight put on them. Why don't you enter that in and say, hey, they're working on this legislation. They mentioned mental health a bunch of times. If you're not aware, Walk the Talk America has been working to, affect change in this area for a long time. The government's trying to ram it down our throat however they see fit. We've got people inside the gun community, the gun industry, right, that's working to make these changes and have for 4 years, right, and get that spotlight on them. When I make that suggestion to them, in private, mind you, I'm accused of I just want publicity so that I grow my efforts. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm asking you to talk about Walk the Talk America, not me. Don't mention me. Don't say that Clover told me about them, or I don't care. Just get their freaking name and their message into what you're putting out there, and they will not do it.
It's a part of it, but I think part of it too is that they don't want anybody but their own experts. Every time legislation's been introduced, I'm not hip to the federal level, but I assume it iterates the same way as the state level. You have the legislation sponsor, who is it's always sponsored by an elected representative, or it's a committee piece. It's submitted by the committee, and they have their experts testify as to why it's a good idea. And then the opposition can come up and say why it's not. But they've already decided what their angle is. So if they're saying mental health, they've handpicked some mental health expert who's going to go and give some twisted testimony to say exactly what they need to say. They're not going to mess with somebody who's going to screw that up or derail it. And that's exactly what we would do. We would come in and say, you're wrong over here because of this, and you over there is wrong because of this. Here's the middle ground. And that throws everybody off. They're not interested in that. They want to keep doing the same dog and pony show that's gotten them in office. This is why we don't resolve things at the federal levels, because resolving things doesn't get you reelected. Keeping people on their heels gets you reelected. Keeping people angry gets you reelected. And to your point earlier about why do people stare at the train wreck, there's a really good series of videos online with a guy who looks a lot like me and bears a striking resemblance to myself while sounding a bunch like my voice, who talks about emotional functioning. And what it is the limbic function in the limbic part of the brain, where think about all your advertising and your headlines center on basically one of two things: fear or excitement. And those motivate you to do something. Fear motivates you to protect. Excitement motivates you to go obtain or pursue or discover. So I'm excited that the new iPhone's coming out, and I'm afraid my neighbor is going to get it first, right? That's advertising. The advertising doesn't work when it's just, you're happy. Happiness says you're getting what you want and stay where you are or everything's fine. That doesn't sell anything. You're fine. You don't need to buy anything. So same thing with news headlines. They're not going to give you news headlines that are fun, because why? Like, I'll just turn off the channel and it tells me that I'm right where I need to be. They need to keep us paralyzed. And our politicians do the same thing with the messaging that rallies the base. Be afraid of the other side because the other side is going to get you. It's like, oh my God, where's my checkbook? I'll donate to you. It's like,
yeah.
Well, I had a long time ago, I had a professor in political science that was awesome, but he said, you want to know how to win an election? You tell the group of people that you're talking to why their lives are so hard, and you tell them who's at fault.
Yep.
And that's how you win an election. Curing things, fixing things, getting something actually done is not going to happen. You get close enough, just close enough to come back and say, man, give me 2 more years in Congress and I can get this fixed. By the way, I need $5,000 from you to get this done, but we're close. We're close, guys. I just need 1 more term. And that's how it works, unfortunately.
And the accomplishments of bills also, I speak on this because I got, like, the audience can't see if you're listening, I got like nose to hand, like less than an inch away. I got this close to running for state assembly, and I was like, nope, that's going to make me barf. So I didn't, but I had all the campaign stuff and the materials and everything. But the legislation that actually gets passed is often not useful. The stuff that gets passed that is useful, it's like, it's so common sense you wouldn't get elected on it anyway. It's like, well, of course you're going to do that thing that everybody wanted you to do. And of course you got unanimous consent, right? So that doesn't matter. And the stuff that fails, you blame it on the other guy, and I need to go back and work harder. It's so despicable and insidious. I can't even begin to wrap my head around it. Other than say it's a terrible experience. Red flag laws are a great example of that, right? So in Nevada in 2019, our assembly or our legislature meets once every 2 years. So in 2019, the red flag and the background check law went in together effective January of 2020. And you know who wasn't consulted on the red flag law? Law enforcement and mental health. Zero input.
What are the odds?
And guess who's the most impacted by it? Law enforcement and mental health. Guess who's the most upset by it? Law enforcement and mental health. Because we're left with, with their hands in the air going, like, am I supposed to, like, when somebody comes in and says they're a gun owner with PTSD, ideating suicide, am I supposed to call the deputies and tell them to take their shit? Or like, that seems unethical. Like we're totally crossways on
it. Can I actually help this person get better and fix their lives?
Awful. It's awful.
Yeah.
All it did was confuse everything.
Yeah, I mean, that's a huge issue too. Just I know from firsthand, like talking with Metro, is they're like, we don't want to enforce this stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So now you've made a law that literally half people are already saying they're not going to enforce, which, I totally get. Because why does a cop want to show up at a door on a bad situation in order to be like, okay, I'm not going to take anything else out of your house. I'm going to take your firearms, the thing that's like in your constitution, So
yeah.
What I love about that, Jake? You know what I love about that? I hear Emmy Betts spit it out all the time. They give you these statistics on how these red flag laws work, and I'm always like, I have a question. Like, how do you know? Did the person say they were gonna shoot up a school after they admit to that after? Like they were like, hey, I was going to do X, but thank God I got red flagged. Yeah, I really feel like they pad these statistics because no one's been able to answer that.
Well, and that gets back to, the do something, right? So we've got these laws in place in Buffalo. Like the dude was flagged and nobody did anything because he hadn't committed an act yet. This isn't Minority Report, and people forget that. It's like, who is supposed to issue that order for the guy who doesn't yet possess firearms? And you can't arrest somebody for thought crimes yet.
Right.
Yeah. So this is a question for even the people in the chat. Like, I think we all can agree that certain people shouldn't have a firearm at a certain time, right? There is a time. It's what is that for you, right? And I know I don't want to play like the $1 million you have to write a red flag law game, but it would be a fun game to play because we say it as a community all the time. That person shouldn't have had those firearms. Right. We said about the Parkland kid, but what is that? It's a red flag that goes and gets those firearms. Right.
Yeah. No,
so like where does it start? Where does it end? Like if I type on social media, I'm thinking about going to do something horrific at a school. Maybe that's a time because it's like, you did it. You said it. It's a threat. Right. But then again, I also I totally don't believe that like your ex-girlfriend should be able to say like, he's got guns, he's crazy,
right.
I think but where does that kick in? Where does it kick in where we're okay with the guns being taken?
Seriously, that would be really interesting to see our side say, hey, we're not going to sit there and submit this to our congressman or senator to submit it into Congress. But the experiment of what does that look like? That's fascinating. No, seriously, because I think a lot of people would be, if you were to sit down, not saying you, but if someone in the audience was able to do this and you were to sit down and write out the criteria in which you think it is okay, and you get 10 different people, there would be a little bit of overlap that we could probably come up with 2 or 3 scenarios that we could all agree on within our own community that it's okay. And at that point, but here's the thing, at that point, as a community, are we now not, standing up for something that we despise very, very vocally? Are we not hypocrites? But I think that is fascinating because I guarantee you there is enough, there is probably 2 or 3 scenarios that if we're all honest with ourselves and we write down that no one will ever see, there's probably 2 or 3 that we could all agree on.
But I think those things are already in place.
That's
the discomfort
exactly what I was
comes.
fixing to come in and say. Yeah.
Amy Barnhorst is a psychiatrist and an instructor at UC Davis. She heads up the Bullet Points Project out of UC Davis. They're gun violence research people. And she helped author the ERPO, Extreme Risk Protection Order, otherwise known as Red Flag laws in California. And she said that with all good intent, the people who did it back when they did it, they were trying to plug the gap between involuntary psychiatric hold when somebody's ideating something that's dangerous to themselves or others that can be triggered by a clinician or whatever, or law enforcement or whatever, and threat to harm explicitly expressed elsewise, not in a clinical setting. They're trying to figure out how to close that gap. And it was like, well, we don't have enough to commit the person because this wasn't a clinician who authorized the involuntary commitment. We don't have enough to arrest because there's no crime committed. But a nice intermediary might be to take the property away for a period of time until they get stable. Okay, great in theory, right? But in practice, it doesn't work like at all. But here's the thing. Okay, now we have the red flag law. Okay, but that only works if the person already owns the guns, which didn't happen the last 2 cases in the last month. So now what do you do? Okay, but let's pretend even further. They do own the guns. They expressed the threat. We still have yet to settle the 4th Amendment, the 5th Amendment issues of property seizure and due process. Those are not settled yet. And it's all well and good that the deputies come knock on your door.
Process will ever get settled. I don't think they're, honestly, not because I don't think they don't want to. I just don't think that there's a way to solve it, honestly.
No, because you need a court of law first. And what this does is it inverts that. It says we are going to take something and then we're going to look for evidence to start the investigation. But you've already inverted it. Like you acted first. And that's, when people get all up in arms over Trump's saying, it's like, take the weapons first, then ask questions later. It's like, that's not how the country was designed. You want to run an autocracy.
That might work in Spain, but not here. That's not how we work.
So it doesn't work unless we want to invert the way or strike some of the things that we have, protecting our civil liberties. It's not going to work. It's all fantasy.
A kid, let me just ask this question though, Jake, and chime in on this. A kid says, I'm going to shoot up a school, or an 18-year-old says, I'm going to shoot up a school.
Arrest him. You can do that. Yep. People aren't willing to, though. That's the problem. Because it's like, all you've got is this open threat. And how long do you detain that person? If they're 17, that's even worse because it's juvenile issues. And there's also, that triggers a whole series of stuff that involves parents who probably aren't there anyway. If it's an 18-year-old or above, age of majority comes into play. Now you're dealing with, traditional adult due process. You can arrest them, but then what? Where's the resources? That's what everybody's missing too, is like red flag laws, get them the help. It's like, well, Clover and I already talked about how we have a provider shortage. Who's going to treat them? Who's going to pay for it? How do we know? And then we're back to the red flag law thing again of like, okay, you took their stuff. You said they were harmful. They agreed that they were harmful. They got help. Who's the one that's going to decertify them? Because right now judges are just shoulder tapping people. Yeah. Absolutely. Do I know that I'm competent? I would. I mean, I'm comfortable with this, but like how many of me are there out there to go decertify people who have been flagged, arrested, whatever, otherwise quarantined?
How many are willing to even step in the arena to take the responsibility of the decertification?
Zero. If you can't see my thing on the screen, zero. And here's why. It's the same reason that people in my profession have abandoned ship on doing child custody evaluations. We don't want to evaluate anything because we're afraid of getting sued. Everybody thinks we're going to get sued, and there's all these lawsuits lurking around every corner. And it's just simply not true because if it were, our liability insurance would be much higher than it is right now, and it's not. It's pathetically low. It's like a couple $100 a year for our liability insurance because we never get sued. But we have this idea in our heads. It's like, if I evaluate an individual, then something goes wrong in the future, they're going to come back and sue me. It's like, yeah, that might happen. And your defense is, I don't have a crystal ball, and you need to learn the words "at this juncture."
At the time, yeah.
It's like, but we don't want to do that because we're scared. And oh, by the way, because of the market dynamics, we're all fat, dumb, and happy. I don't need to go do evaluations. I could just sit back in my cubicle and treat people and do the low-level stuff that doesn't threaten to send me to court.
Right.
Well, I know that Parkland, the El Paso, the Midland, Odessa. What was the other one? Santa Fe here in Texas.
Santa Fe,
there were several. There was quite a few. The latest rash. I haven't done this, but I contacted law enforcement, high and low, here in Texas, talking about, because that was back when red flags were really starting.
By the way, Clover, let me interrupt real quick. What you just said there, contacting law enforcement, high and low in Texas for whatever it is that you're about to say, that is the work. That's the work we're referring to. It's hard to do that. It takes time, it takes sacrifice, and it takes humility and a lot of like panache too, to be like, I'm just going to pick up the phone and start talking to people who are in charge of law enforcement. Like, good for you. Thank you.
It's good to
That's
know people.
Good effort.
Yeah. I appreciate that.
It does help. It does help. Yes,
you want to address Patriot first, and I'll finish.
Yeah, real quick. He says, "Good evening, great show and topic. Make sure to send good socks, not army socks with those toe things. I don't like the socks with the toe things. They're just a little creepy for me. Just saying." But thank you for the super chat, Patriot. He's a good guy. But all super chats are going to Wealth Talk America tonight. So thanks for that, buddy. Appreciate it. Go ahead, Clove.
So, yeah, I mean, I talked for everything from state troopers to, sheriff's deputies to local PD to, you name it. And
did you talk to Walker, Texas Ranger? Because that's really
I did not talk to Walker, Texas Ranger. No,
you could have talked to him. Probably NRA. He was there, I bet.
Yeah, probably. But yeah,
he get a roundhouse kick to the face.
He shoots a Glock now, so I've dismissed him. Wow. But so, and one conversation usually led me to a contact, and I do know some people, and then it led me to contact to be able to talk to some others, but nobody ever knew the context of the conversation that we were going to have. At least I tried to build it that way, and we talked about all of those different tragedies, things they had in common, what could have been done, what law enforcement could have done, right? Either on the federal level, the state, the local, whatever it might be. And in each one of the scenarios, there was something that could have been done, right? Like some law ordinance, something
sure
gave them cause. Now, as Jake pointed out, does that a detainment for 24 hours, 48 hours a week, or whatever? What's the judge going to set the bail at, or the bond, or whatever it might be, which is minuscule, and they're back out. And there's a whole host of other things. But at the end of the day, all of them, everybody, and like I said, I didn't have them in a room. This was all independent conversations. All said that told me that things, and they all pretty much lined up on each one on the things I can't remember now, but the things that could have been done. And they also lined up that things should have been done in their opinion. Like, if that was me, if I was there, it should have been done. So it gets to what Jake was saying earlier, that, and we already know this from, and red flag laws is one of those things, right? We talk about, people say we need background checks. Well, we've already got background checks. We need better background checks. We've already got background checks that they're not using properly, apparently, right?
Well, what do you
so
get?
Why do we need better? We need better use of the background checks, maybe, right?
Ultimately it comes down to, you can't legislate what's in someone's head.
But it works the same way with red flag, is that without violating the Constitution, we already have, legally speaking, from law enforcement, we already have things on the books.
Yep.
Yeah,
they just need to enforce those things.
So you arrest them, right? Kid from Parkland already had guns. How long do you detain him? What do you do?
Yeah. I don't know. This is where it comes into. So the conversations I had,
are you going to make them sell their property?
So the conversations I had, this gets into a much broader conversation of law enforcement doing a better job at not being jackbooted thugs and being more like Andy Griffith, right? Each one of them said, does that person have family members? Okay, we
Right.
arrest them. We need to reach out to their family members if they've got these, guns, if they've got things, let the family members know this is going on. We're concerned, whatever the case may be. And I was even told stories that happened in not every one of the law enforcement officers that I talked to, but some of them, especially the local cops, police chiefs, I should say, told me that, there was times when they would get, like a wellness check thing, and they would go over there and the guy had guns and he had knives and he had stuff and he was whacked out of his gourd, and, they just sat out on the porch and talked to the guy, and another guy, walked out to the car and he made a phone call and called some family members and said, hey, Joe's over here.
Yeah.
Hey, and then the family member showed up and then they talked him into going and getting help and getting treatment, right? And so they didn't arrest anybody. They didn't kick and knock down doors at 3:00 in the morning. And they handled it in a community style way, right? Like treating somebody like they're a human, not like you're a convicted, felon or whatever before you've even been tried in a court of law.
That's how it should be done, Chris. You're right. And another humble brag. I trained cops for several years. That's exactly what we're teaching them to do. When they encounter mentally ill subjects, to validate, listen, explore options, not jump straight to super cop mode and tackling people, right? And that's where a lot of the competence training has to come in with regard to mentally ill subjects with firearms. Do we just seize the property? Well, that didn't solve the dude's problem. That's not helping advance, humanity. So you're right. That's a completely reasonable way to go.
You've also got the problem. I'm lucky enough to live in Texas. They could call a family member. Family member takes all the guns out of the house. Done deal, right? There are states where you can't do that.
Well, and there's people like the dude in Uvalde who didn't have family members. I mean, that's just a different situation altogether, and it's almost.
There's going to be a lot more information that comes out about this that people don't quite. It's not cut and dry, black and white. What happens in these situations? It's not just like you said. There's a lot of stuff going on, and there's going to be a lot more stuff that comes out 6 months from now, probably.
Yeah, and you got to remember, too, what's going through the supervisor's heads, too, the sergeant or the lieutenant on scene who's making the call to sit with the guy and talk to him or red flag him, right? Their political proclivities, their appetite for litigation one way or another. If they sit with the guy, talk with him, family members come over, and again, I come from a family full of cops. I've been around it my whole life. Then he gets his treatment, or maybe he doesn't, because 24 hours later, he gets some good sleep and is like, no, I'm good now. Doesn't qualify. Hospital doesn't admit him, any number of things. And then 2 days later, he does his heinous deed, whether it's self-inflicted or inflicted upon others. And it comes back, goes, why did you do what you did? And it works the other way too. Let's take his guns and lock him in the hospital for 3 days. And then the dude comes out and goes, you violated my rights. So which ledge do you want to stand on is what it comes down to. And I do this with my clinicians when I train them, the students and the interns. I say, you're always going to be standing on a ledge. Make sure you can articulate why you're standing on it. Just pick one, but make sure you can articulate it. That's your defense in court. You say, I did it because of these reasons, and here's my intentionality. People just aren't comfortable doing that.
I like that. And that's not just in court, but in life in general. Whatever you choose to stand for in life, stand for it. Do the best that you can do to stand for whatever it is that you're passionate about.
Know why you do what you do. It's acting with a spirit of intentionality. Know why you do what you do. It puts you in charge of your decision making. If you can reasonably predict what the outcome will be when you make the decision, then there's no question about why you did it. And you can answer when people ask, why'd you do it? Well, because of these reasons, and this was the foreseeable conclusion. All right, well, I had new information after I decided. I didn't get that before.
At the time, once again, we come back to those words, at this juncture, at this time, you have to go with what you have knowledge with.
And there's
Um,
and
yeah, go ahead.
there's another factor too. Wes is bringing up out there.
Yeah,
we get hit over the head with quote unquote gun violence, right, or whatever, and
Yep.
they often link the rise in overall crime to just what they consider gun violence,
correct.
right? And what Wes is bringing up is that a lot of the DAs,
Yep.
who are elected officials and have political affiliations and a lot of other things. And there's a lot of DAs that just are not pursuing cases that they should pursue.
Yeah,
Absolutely. 100%.
yeah, and some of that's staffing issues. Some of it's pure staffing, and just like we
Sure.
don't have the bandwidth.
Sure.
Some of it's political, but sometimes like we're not going to take that on because we know what resources it would gobble up, and we just can't afford that right now.
Yep.
Well, a lot of times it's much easier to talk about mental health than it is to do something about mental health.
Well,
It's easy to
yeah,
talk
I mean, geez, like the level of ignorance that I see, that's not a condescension. That's just an observation. The level of ignorance I see about what mental health practitioners can do and what they're allowed to do and what they are even desiring to do is almost identical with the same rhetoric that gets spilled about the gun community. It's like, we just need to blah 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 with the ARs. It's like, yeah, but do you know what you're talking about? You clearly don't, because you can't. What are you going to do it by design? If you do it by design, we have to go down to something quantifiable like action. Is it the semi-auto part, or is it the shooty projectile part, or is it the length of case part? Like, which part is it that you're going to go after? Because that has a ripple effect across a whole bunch of other weapons that you didn't understand to even fall in the same family.
Right.
And same thing with mental health. It's like, mental health, get them more treatment. It's like, you realize it takes bodies, right? Bodies that have to go to school and get credentialed and licensed and regulated. And oh, by the way, the pay isn't great.
In 6 years, great idea.
Yeah. Yeah. By the way, the next election cycle's in 2.
Yeah.
And I think what's been proven in the last, whatever it is, hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes, is that this, we started out talking about mental health, and we went down many, many roads that have nothing to do with mental health. And so what that says is this is a very difficult conversation. It's very complex. There's a lot of moving parts. And at the end of the day, it's all hands on deck.
And I think what you just touched on, Clover, is one of the big reasons why it isn't started as a conversation is because it's a difficult one to have. It is multi-layered. It is something that you're going to have to face some harsh realities to, no matter what side of the fence you're on. It's a difficult conversation to have, and they don't want that.
Let's be honest. Most people want the glory. If Jake and Mike, and I know neither one of them care if they get the credit or the glory. If all they cared about was the credit or glory, we wouldn't have mentioned law enforcement. We wouldn't have talked about red flags or legislation, or we probably wouldn't have gone down any of those roads.
It wouldn't have gone 2 hours.
They would have had all the solutions, and all those solutions is go donate to WTTA, which you need to go do that, by the way, if you're out there.
Absolutely.
But that would be the only thing we talked about.
I'm going to go ahead and put the.
I want to ask what Patriot's asking here.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that is.
Absolutely. Yeah, go for it.
But I don't know what the question is.
For the podcast side, let me go ahead and read the question. Let's see here. Find it back here. How would you go about asking someone you're confronting who's in their family if it's in a large, more urban area? And I don't think that this has anything to do with an urban versus rural. This is one of the questions I was going to ask Jake to kind of end off is, and I'll use this to do this. For the average person out there that wants to be part of helping, what are some of the ways that we can help? And a lot of this is how can we identify? How can we confront someone? I mentioned earlier, if you notice a loved one's personality changing, confront them. But the question is, how do you do that? Because once again, we don't know what kind of frame of mind, but that's a great question. How do you confront someone like that?
I didn't know what the question. Now I get it. Okay. So I've done this before, and it's a little weird because I wear the therapist hat professionally, and you're not supposed to treat your family or friends. But then it's like, what am I supposed to do with my skill set? Just set it aside and pretend it doesn't exist. So I just kind of that's my own thing. But anybody can do this. Rapport matters a great deal. If you don't have great rapport with the person, it's going to go over poorly. But just go, hey man, I've noticed a change in you recently, and so remember now. You can anticipate, again, intentionality, right? You can anticipate your heart in your throat. Your stomach's going to be full of butterflies because you're going to be talking about something very vulnerable and very intimate. And that is the person's psychological well-being. But here's how you insulate yourself. You stick to observations. You don't try to reach for conclusions. So you say, I've just noticed that you're not responding to texts like you used to.
Yep.
Right. And you go, or you say, hey, the last couple of times we picked our kids up from school, you seem a little distracted. Everything okay? And maybe you just stop with distracted and you don't ask everything okay, because that leads them to, yeah, fine, man. But if you have good rapport and you present that confrontation out of love and compassion and concern, like not because you want to like beat them about the head and shoulders with it, you say, hey, looks like you've been a little distracted lately. Care to talk about that? And then it listen, in my experience, people just want to be asked. Right. Yeah. They just need the invitation. Absolutely. And then it's like, oh man, yeah, dude, it's just, no, I'm fine. It's just that, wife's out of town and daughter's sick and, whatever it is, like, I just got a lot on my head and trying to fix the place up or whatever. It's like, okay, cool. We're square. That's a temporary thing. But if we call it affect, which is how you wear your emotion on your face. If the affect changes to something like, yeah, man, I don't know, it's a lot. And they can't immediately just dismiss it with some reasonable explanation, that may be cause for a follow-up where you go, hey, I don't want to solve your problems and I don't know that I can anyway, but I'm here if you need me. Just let me know. And sometimes just saying, I'm going to sit with you in your crap is enough for the person to go, you know what, maybe life's not so bad. And then everything unlocks. Sometimes they take you up on the invitation. They go, yeah, actually, we need to go have a beer. You free Saturday? And by God, you better clear your calendar. And then just shut up and listen. But it's really hard. There's a little skill set that goes along with that as far as if you want to learn more about how to have an effective conversation where you're not like problem solving and you learn how to sit and validate. That can all be learned through reading a book called Walking Through Anger by one of my friends and mentor, Christian Conti, who was on our podcast too. We have a Guns and Mental Health podcast if you want to listen to him. But it's called Walking Through Anger. It's a great way to improve your own communication skills. Very little to do with anger, actually, but more to do with what he calls yield theory, meeting people where they are. It's about $18 on Amazon. Super easy read. Anybody can read it. It's great.
So I read that question a little different.
Well, he clarified.
He clarified it here. He was saying he was referring to Officer in Clover's Mayberry situation.
Because he said
if it was in a city where they don't know the person directly, and that's another great one.
So here's an approach I'll use, and I use this. I don't know that I've ever used it that I've seen anybody in it. I thought it was any kind of mental distress, but it's somebody maybe I was having a conversation with and I didn't really know them. And I want to go. We got the days of Google Food and Facebook, right? And I'll go like, who's your mom? Or like, who's your dad? A lot of times.
Who's your daddy?
Yeah.
Who's your daddy?
I don't say that. But you get what I'm saying, right? I'll ask about a parent or like a parent or a grandparent or something, right? And then from there, I mean, sometimes it'll click and you're like, oh, okay, I know who that is. And sometimes I'll fib it and I'm like, man, that sounds familiar. I'll go off their last name or I'll go off something like that, right? And I'm like, it sounds familiar. Who's your dad? Who's your mom? Man, I don't know. That sounds awful familiar, right? And it's just in passing, right? And then, later on kind of figure it out or put two and two together and it all makes sense. So, I mean, if you're talking about something that you see some weird action on somebody and, you're just talking with them, I would suggest maybe that approach. And then you could maybe, if it's somebody and you can find a connection to the family, you can say,
or just say, or it doesn't have to be family. You just say, hey, who can I hook you up with who's going to be a little more familiar and can walk you through some options after we're done talking. So you've already set the tone that you're going to be done talking at some point and you're not there to help them forever. Crisis workers do that a lot.
I think a lot of it comes down to, especially with someone you don't know. It's funny because our community is very prideful on situational awareness. Everyone talks about situational awareness. Um, and I think that's a great thing, but a lot of people just talk the talk. Um, being situationally aware comes into play in so many different levels. I don't care if you know a person or not. You can see when people are just having a really bad day. Their shoulders are dropped. They're looking down. They want to avoid any eye contact. They want to avoid any social contact whatsoever. They're sitting off by themselves and don't even want to be included in a group of any. There's different things that you can identify, whether you know someone or not, that is at least saying that guy's struggling with something. And it might be his girlfriend broke up with him that morning, or he just got fired. But there are signs, and I'm not a clinician, although I did stay at the Holiday Inn Express once. But there are signs, and I think it comes down to just being a better human being and get out of your own space for a little bit and understand that. Just observe. You want to talk about being situation aware. That's not just for threats and when you can draw your gun. That's being situation aware is, dude, that dude looks like he's having a rough day. And you know what? Sometimes the greatest thing that could happen to someone is saying hello with a smile on your face. There are people that literally won't have communication with a human being for weeks, months at a time, and sometimes a simple "Hey man, how you doing?"
or maybe
all it takes.
And maybe follow it up with a just menial conversation.
Yeah, hey man, did you see that game last night? I mean, whatever.
Yeah.
But a simple human interaction
wouldn't work for me because I didn't see the game last night.
Yeah, well,
no, but
I hear you.
Ghost, what you're talking about is exactly what Kevin Hines says, right? Everybody, I mean, most people know the Kevin Hines story. If you don't, look it up. It's pretty fascinating. But there's a point where he was talking about, because he jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, and he said he had made a decision that he was going to jump unless somebody asked, "Are you okay?" Like in his head, he was like, if somebody says, "How are you okay, man? You know, how are you doing?" And he was like, it didn't happen. And he's like, as a matter of fact, he's like, I was out of it. And people were like, dude, are you getting off the bus? Like the bus driver said that to him.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And that always stuck with me because I was like, damn, like that was real simple the way he put it. Like, don't underestimate, like, hey, man, you good? Like, you having a good day? You know, just a simple, like, someone actually taking a vested interest in asking you're good.
A common stranger that you don't know from Adam. Hey man, how you doing? Everything okay with you? Hey, have a good day. Whatever it is. I mean, that is something. Talking to people, and I'm not putting out there because Jay can correct me if I'm wrong, but my experiences in talking to people a lot is they feel like they're alone. Whether or not they put themselves in that position or not is irrelevant at that point. Mentally, they feel like no one is there. They're fighting this darkness by themselves. And the light switch is literally hello.
Mm-hmm.
Are you okay? It's as simple as that. That's the crazy thing about it is until you've been in that darkness, most people don't understand. And there's a great anecdote that I've loved forever. Guy's down a hole and he's yelling up, you know, hey guys, I'm stuck down this hole, you know, send me a ladder, you know, get some help. And a guy jumps in the hole. He says, what the hell are you doing? Now we're both stuck down here. He goes, yeah, but I've been here before and I know the way out.
Yeah.
Until you've been in that darkness, you don't know what it's like. And sometimes that light switch is a very simple light switch to get to.
A text message. Hey, just want to let you know I'm thinking about you. It's been a while since
I have a list of people of about 13 or 14 people, most of which I have met through the internet, which is ironic through this, that I have talked to on the phone or through email that have expressed down times. And every month I send a text message to every single one and say, hey, bro, just checking in. How's everything going?
Mm-hmm.
Great, man. How about you? Hey, I'm great, man. Let me know if you need anything. I'm always here. And it's one of those things where I think more people can do that. As simple as that is, like you said, a text message, an email. You don't even have to do, like you said, if being face to face, having a conversation is not your gig. Yeah. Email, text message, whatever it is. It's crazy. So I'm going to start out this. It's been 2 hours. Jake, we kind of started this a little bit, but just in generalities, if someone knows a clinician, knows a therapist, knows even an MD, whatever it is, but someone that wants, even if they don't know one, but if they want to help push it forward on the clinical, on the medical side of this, are there things that they can do to point? They might know, like my doctor, my family doctor is, most of the time when I go in there, half our conversation's guns. Is there something that I can do and say, hey, if you're interested about being a pro-gun doctor, have you ever thought about doing this? I don't know. Is there something out there like that?
I think that's a great way to do it, and I would encourage them to take our class. We have 3-part course. 2 parts are available for free on the website. They're 3 hours a piece. They're usually good for continuing education credits wherever you are. And even if not, it's just cool because you learn what we're about and you learn our lingo and you learn that we're about changing vocabulary away from like safe storage to responsible storage and what that means. And like you get the drift, right? Invite your doc or your clinic, whoever it is, could be your neighbor who just happens to work as a dentist or whatever. Invite them to take that training. And then they'll get a certificate out of that they can put somewhere. And we'll give them a digital badge if they want to put it on their email signature.
They all love putting stuff on walls, don't they?
And it'll say, Walk the Talk America Level 1 certificate or whatever. And then if nothing else, it's a conversation starter for somebody who's staring at the wall being like, what's that about? I can say, oh, it's this guns and mental health organization that, I support. That's all we really need is like just sign on and say that you're a part of it. And then we can start to build our database, which would be really cool. And I think it'll snowball from there. And they can get wristbands and have them on the counter at their practice. They can get our Guns and Mental Health podcast stickers and throw them out there because it says it's a big giant Guns and Mental Health WTTA podcast. It's like people look at it, what is this? Flyers, they can have flyers that say mental health. It's okay to talk about it. It says, as firearms owners, we are often, hesitant to seek care or whatever, but we need to. They can have the passive invitation sitting on their desk or their reception area. So yeah, that's what I would invite people to do. If you know these folks, specifically ask them, hey, I know this great organization. I mean, we are a great organization. I know this great organization called Walk the Talk America. They do guns and mental health. But it's not just for mental health. It's for anybody who's practicing in the profession of medicine. Like, would you be interested in doing this? And at bare minimum, just give them the website and be like, hey, check it out. There's lots of resources and you can take their course or get their wristbands or whatever. They give free and anonymous mental health screenings. Who doesn't like free and anonymous? So yeah, just start the conversation. I invite everybody to listen. And if you want to do that, just be bold. Like as bold as we were talking about checking in on your friends, make the purposeful invitation to ask your colleagues, your counterparts, your friends and family to check us out and be a part of it.
Yeah. G23 says, does WTTA have swag that people can buy?
Because we're a 501c3, we have swag that we could give away with a donation.
And if you want one, I don't know how many of these bad boys I have that I'm more than welcome to send to anybody that wants one.
I'll tell you the cool thing that we've started doing, and this was a Pincus thing too that I picked up on. I've been doing a lot lately. I carry a bunch of these in my truck, and it's not to give them away; it's to give this one away. So I'll see like all over Reno, there's people who wear 9-line gear and veteran stuff, and I'll just, if we're at the pump this happens at the pump at Costco for whatever reason all the time, and I'll see somebody's window stickers and be like, hey, see your stickers. I'm part of a guns and mental health organization. I'm a firearms owning practitioner, and we're a suicide prevention. I'll take the wristband off and be like, we're suicide prevention at our core, but I think you'd enjoy checking it out. Here you go. Take my wristband. It leads to a free and anonymous mental health screening. And they're like, oh my God, really? Yeah, man. We're totally 2A, no restrictions. We just want to join the two cultures. And they're like, thanks. This means a lot. Every single time. I've done it. I don't know. I've done it in the airport. I've done it in the middle of the grocery store, out wherever. Like, I've probably done it 10 or 12 times now. And it's the most rewarding feeling ever, because the wristband is like, wow, you gave me the wristband off your arm. That's so cool. And then they go check out the website, and who knows what happens from there. But at least I made a connection, and it's like a little spark of hope. And you know damn well that if they're a veteran and they have veteran shit all over their car, they have experienced death with a firearm, because that's just the way it goes. So it means something. It really does.
I don't want anyone to ever let Rob know that I said this, because God knows he needs a bigger head, but that's a phenomenal idea.
Yeah, he was just saying it off. And like I was like, I was breaking his balls over it. I was like, where's your wristband? He's like, oh, I gave it to somebody on the plane. I was like, what? That's brilliant. You can always get another wristband. Of course, give it away. How stupid. So yeah,
phenomenal idea.
I carry extras in my pocket just so I can't give them away. Just saying.
Next to the gummy worms that are all nice and warm.
Oh man.
That's me.
Jelly beans.
I like the gummy bears.
Jelly beans.
He's a jelly bean guy. I'm a gummy bear guy. Good Lord. Yeah. He's one of those weird ones that goes and gets like 5 pounds of jelly beans of like assorted flavors.
Oh God, all the gourmet.
Yeah, some of that shit is nasty, bro.
3 pounds. I only got 3 pounds for SHOT Show. Oh, buttered popcorn. Oh
no, I said the Harry Potter ones. The,
yeah, those.
Yeah, I've got those. I will not ever open them, but I do have some of those.
Yeah, I'm a
Harry Potter nerd. I'm a very Harry Potter nerd, but yeah, he said he only got 3 pounds of jelly beans for SHOT Show.
Only.
And I actually I probably had we got back to Amarillo, and I had like a pound of them left.
Stop trying to validate your stuff. Don't validate your stuff.
No, listen. So I had like a pound of them left, right? And there was this homeless guy when we stopped to get gas. And I'm like, once I get home,
here, man, enjoy your diabetes.
Well, that wasn't all.
I know you probably need protein and bread, but here's some straight sugar.
You're straight
sugar.
Take
I'm like, hey, dude, this is gonna sound really weird. That's not all I
get. Coke.
I'm like,
fun.
This gonna sound really weird. I said, but I got like a shit ton of jelly beans here. I said, and when I get home, I'm not gonna be able to eat them. I'm like, I'm just gonna have to throw them away anyway. I didn't want him like to freak him out or nothing. I'm like, and he's like, hell yeah.
Yeah, because it's not weird. Okay. Some dude walking and giving you a pound of jelly beans. That's not weird at all.
And he says, "Oh, I was gonna throw it away." So the best thing I
throw
can
them
do
away.
is
so here,
my trash.
Well, yeah, I told him why. I told him I couldn't eat them once I got
home.
Dude,
no matter what you try to do, this is not going to end well for you.
He took them and he was eating them. He said they were awesome, and I agreed with him because I ate 2 pounds of them. They were awesome.
He said I ate 2 pounds. Do you know how many 2 pounds of jelly beans?
I was gonna say, what does that even look like?
I shared a bunch in the media room.
It's one of those jars where you guess the number.
Stick my stomach up. It looks like that.
We have derailed.
Oh my God! I'm sorry. That would be so funny.
Hats and shirts. Yeah, we should get some hats.
Hats and shirts. Well, I've got a shirt. I didn't even think of putting it on tonight.
Our shirt gets a lot of
shirts are badass.
People are always like, "I love your shirt."
And that's why I get to give my wristbands away. People see the shirt.
You mean you're not going to take the shirt off your back and give it to them?
I don't have another one. Mike's been stingy.
Oh, wow.
Wow. He's stingy with the shirts. That's what
wow.
I haven't put enough time.
There. Yeah, I'm not going to go there. I could go down to a whole other. Never mind. All right. Mike, for those at the local and ground level, and I know there are people out there that are putting your flyers in their local gun shops and stuff like that. But for people that are at the local level that may not have the money to donate and support Walk the Talk America directly, there are a lot of things they could do to help support the cause and Walk the Talk America. For those that are out there that might be wanting to jump in this game, what are some of the ways that they can help support you and Jake and all the other guys working on it?
Well, there's numerous ways. So, and we list them on the website when you go there. Actually, when you go to the donation page, like we list the other ways you can help. Talk about it. You know, once again, anytime you can share a post or anything like that, there's little billboards going out there into social media land. You know, stay on top of your favorite gun companies and things like that. You know, send them messages. Maybe it will help. You know, just, hey, you should get behind this organization. I think that's a big one. You know, however, if you have an idea, come at it to us, right? Like, we're open ears when it comes to that. You know, for me, it's like sometimes people come up with creative ways, or, you know, it's kind of like you, Clover, like you've come up with ways, you know what I mean? Like, where you're just like, hey, can I do this? I'm gonna make a sweatshirt or whatever. You know, anytime you spread the word, I think that'll help. You know, don't be afraid to bring us up in anything when you're on Twitter battling.
Yeah, Clover just made a great point. Hound the crap out of the big 2A channels. You know, we I don't know if you touched on it earlier, but
hound politely.
We had what we thought was a pretty good post. Some endeavor we did, showed up at San Jose State at an event that was basically an anti-gun event, but we were super well received, and it was again more trying to bridge the culture, and we got scorched by one account on social media, and it was amazing how many people came into the chat to our defense, and that was really cool to see. That's like, we're always going to have those outliers who are like, it's mental health, it's Trojan horse for stealing your guns. Like, have you looked at the board of directors? Like, pretty hard to argue those guys are anti-2A, but don't be afraid of that, is what I'm saying. Like, don't be afraid of the naysayers who are just going to dig their heels in, and they're not interested, right? We're not really interested in talking to them if they're going to be the David Hogg of the 2A community. Like, that doesn't help anybody.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I want to go through this. I put the link out there, but ways to help besides a financial donation. Individuals, if you know someone is able to donate their professional services, there's a way to get in touch. You can create and I've done this several times. I think a lot of people have. Create a Facebook fundraiser. You know, when your birthday comes up, do a fundraiser. You might raise $50. You might raise $5,000. I guarantee that $50 helps. $5 helps, whatever. But yes, then you can go and whoops, let me go back over here and create an Instagram or Twitter, whatever. Firearm store owners. I print these out, I don't know, 3 or 4 times a year. I'll take about 150, 200 flyers, take them to local gun shops, and and I have it then where he's not going to, Clover's doing it. He's got them putting it in boxes. I haven't talked him into doing that, but what I have talked him into is putting the flyers on their counter by their cash register. So everyone that comes into a couple of different shops around here sees that flyer. You can donate by printing those out and taking them to your local gun shop. And like this says, put that, or have them put in a bag or whatever. Clover has been able to get them in boxes.
If there is a box, yeah.
If there is a box, yeah. But at least take them to the bulletin board at work, wherever you are. And another one is firearm manufacturers or accessory companies. Add the WTTA mental health flyer to your box or packaging. I would even say
accessories and ammo
for
sure.
You didn't even have to do that. Just adding the link to your website could be huge.
So when I talked about hounding the big 2A, channels and stuff, same thing goes for the firearm and accessory people that you deal with. Most of the time, you've got a comment section when you make a purchase and all of that stuff. And just put in there, I'd like to see you support WTTA or Walk the Talk America. I'd spell it out, or something, right? If you know people that work for it, maybe say, for those companies, maybe say something to them. Who knows? I mean, one or two here and there, it makes a difference.
And there's a zillion ammo companies shipping a zillion bullets every day with, cardboard boxes that they throw stuff into that advertise other brands that they sell at their company. It'd be cool just to throw our logo on one of those flyers or our flyer itself into that box. That'd be neat. If I open up something from, some place I got on AmmoSeek that just came in my mail. I'm like, oh, cool. Free anonymous mail health screening. That's different.
Yep. So real quick, Clover, any last minute comments before we let Jake and Mike kind of give where they're going to be, where they are, where they can be contacted. I want to let you have a few minutes to talk about anything that you have to bring up that you wanted to bring up throughout the show.
No, I think we covered it. I mean, obviously not A to Z. There's so much to cover, but we covered a lot of it.
You're never going to cover it all. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay. Jake, what I want to do is give you a few minutes first to tell people where they can find you, any projects you personally, whether it's with Zephyr or with WTTA or whatever it is that you have going on that you might want people to be aware of, or projects and all that. While you're doing that, I'm going to be putting out links and all that as well. But yeah, Jake, I want to give you a few minutes to talk about anything you've got going on you want to get out to the public.
Really it's this. I'm going to drop in here the book link for Walking Through Anger, because I think it's an amazing book. Watch my emotional functioning videos. I sit there and teach. There's 10 core emotions. There's 9 videos, because one's an intro, and then 2 of the videos I do 2 emotions at a time. But I think it's just a great way to learn how your brain works, and you can share that. It's totally age appropriate, family friendly. Like, sit down, watch it with your kids, your spouse. It'll improve your communication. I guarantee it. I'm on Twitter. I'm pretty active on Twitter at Jake Wisk, JakeWisk. It's just me. It's actually right now it's our mental health our Guns Mental Health Podcast avatar. But I'm Jake Wiskerson. G23, I saw you want to get me on a podcast. I don't know who you are, or do I know who you are? And I just didn't know it, but you can reach me. Jake at Zephyr.
He's up in he's a good dude. He's up in the Pacific Northwest region of the country, and does a pretty good podcast on he does his big one on the weekends. I'm sure he can fit your schedule, whatever you want. And if you need to, I can introduce you to him if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah, connect us over email. I'm accessible. My work email is jake@zephyrwellness.org. If people want to reach out, I don't hide that or anything. So
people contact you through Instagram or Twitter through DMs. Is that something you?
Yeah, through Twitter. My Instagram's private. I'm not really on there much anymore these days. It's just gotten too busy. But Twitter for sure. And just disclaimer: I'm not gonna treat you because my bandwidth is limited. But I will absolutely help direct you to resources and stuff like that. I don't mind. If somebody's really super curious about getting in the mix, I'll take a Zoom with anybody to help them with whatever they want to figure out. I'm totally accessible, and so that's pretty much it.
The Noggin Notes podcast I put out there as well. Go check that out. It's a good one.
So my mental health problem, if the goal
he can't fix
to
you.
treat my mental health problem is for Jake to treat me, then how do I get to that goal if Jake can ever treat me?
He can't help you.
Yeah, it's
just doomed.
It's I wasn't going to bring this up, but it's the accent, man.
I love it.
I can't get past it.
Really?
Sorry.
He has a height requirement as well. Neither one of us passed that.
Okay.
Neither one of us passed that height requirement.
Get to see the world from a whole different perspective, man.
Yeah, you guys have no idea what the world's out here is like.
Walk under a gate, and
there ain't no smog or anything down here. It's beautiful. And hot air rises, so it's always nice and crisp and cool down here. It's just beautiful.
Grass smells better at our level.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things.
Yeah. As long as you keep it cut, because it gets tough trying to walk through it if you don't keep it cut.
There's nothing better than freshly mown.
Oh, I know. Especially when it rains on it just a little bit afterwards.
These guys wouldn't know that, because by the time that scent gets up that high, and they see different weather than we do. They have to wear oxygen masks at that altitude. I mean, we don't have to worry about any of that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, we get to repel out of our vehicles. I mean, how much more fun do we have in life? You know, let's just be honest. Oh shit! Sorry. All right. Mike, I want to bring you in, and then while you're doing this, I'll be putting links out there as well. Anything, last comments, anything that you want to bring up, what you guys have been doing lately, what you have any plans on doing, any events coming up or whatever, anything that you need to get out to the public, go for it. And I'll be putting your links out while we're doing this.
No, there's really nothing. I mean, it's the same old thing that I've been doing the last 4 years. Trying to think of any public events that are coming up that we're going to be at. Now we just hit the NRA show. So, now it's going to be back to doing the actual work. I'm going to chase these guys down a little bit. And then, like I said earlier, our mission doesn't ever end because once everything dies down, we still deal with 67 people a day taking their life with a firearm. So we're like in it, but I wanted to thank both of you for having us on and just our friendship and just the support. When I act out and I talk about the industry doesn't care, I'm not talking about you two. You guys, you guys have always been there for us. And from day one, I mean, geez, both of you had me on the show when Walk the Talk America wasn't even, it was more of a concept. You know what I mean?
Ghost made his own sweatshirt before we even had clothing for ourselves.
Right.
Yeah. But, so I just can't thank you enough.
I can't fit it anymore, but that's a whole nother issue.
Yeah. There's a laundry list of people too, that some of them were in the chat tonight that have just been so supportive. So I really appreciate that. So I don't want anyone to hear that, I'm saying that we don't get love when we do. But, go to WTTA.org, walktalkamerica.org. Social media is at Walk the Talk US, and that's across Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm on there too. It's at Michaels_Sedini. If you have any questions or anything like that, just reach out. I mean, we're very responsive. I think that's one of the cool things about guys like Jake and other people that are involved in the organization, whether just from being someone who's really supporting it, is like we always respond. We always talk to you. We even hear your stories. You know what I mean? Like we get people all the time that are just like, hey, this is an issue here. And we need to hear when there's issues, especially like in certain states, so we can address those things. So, feel free to reach out.
Yeah, there has, over the years, last 4 years, there have been some amazing stories that have come through the website or to you directly. I know there are people that even at SHOT Show and in NRAM that will find you to tell you a story about something that happened to them or a friend or someone they knew. Some of the stories people wouldn't believe. They wouldn't believe them if they heard. They would think that there's no way that's a real thing, and they are. And you had a gentleman. I'm not going to bring it up, but in Colorado, that a few years back, that you wouldn't believe it if you were told the story.
Right.
You would not believe the craziness of the story, and you're like, people don't realize that because you're comfortable and you're safe in your life and your environment, the worst case scenario of people breaking down mentally happens, and it's real, and it could be someone that you know or someone that you love or someone you love knows. It's real. So be on the lookout. I tell this all the time, just be a good person, be on the lookout and helping people, listen to people. It's really not that hard to be a good person. Maybe, I don't know, maybe it is for some people, but just be a good person. And if you see someone struggling, literally the easiest thing that could save someone's life is saying hello to them. And it's as simple as that. Jake, Mike, as always, it's always awesome to have you on. Thank you so much for coming. Clover, thanks for showing up. I guess it means a great deal to me that you showed up. No, Clover, love Clover, but no, he's awesome. But Jake and Mike,
I am awesome.
You are awesome. You are awesome. But I appreciate you guys for what you're doing.
No doubt.
I appreciate the fight that you continue to fight for literally no recognition. And if you think that a 501c is a profitable engagement into life, think again. They do
only if you're the Red Cross or Susan G. Komen, I think.
I think United Way makes a little bit of money.
That's true too. Yeah.
A little bit.
March for Our Lives.
There's a few of them that make quite a bit of money, but if you're able to support Walk the Talk American anyway, obviously financially, that would be wonderful. More importantly, if just help them out. Visit their website. There are a lot of resources on the website that you could share.
Duncan.
What's that?
Duncan just made an appearance.
Duncan
Hi,
Fife. Yeah. Man, it's been a while since I've seen Duncan. Yeah.
Thanks, yo.
But what's that?
I said, thanks, yo.
Yeah, but thank you so much for all that you guys are doing, and thank you everyone out there that donated tonight. I will make sure that Mike gets those funds. More importantly, like I said, just be out there, be aware, and understand that just because you're having a great day doesn't mean that everyone is. And don't judge people for it. And this is something that I learned a long time ago. And I don't remember who it was that told me, but it's something I'll always keep. Is don't ever judge someone off their worst day. Don't ever judge someone off their worst day, because you don't know what day that is for them. If you see someone that's having a bad day, don't judge, because you could be in that same hole tomorrow, and you don't want people judging you. So be a good person. Listen to people, have a conversation, say hello. More importantly, just be a good person. So thank you guys for watching. Thanks, Jake and Mike. Appreciate you guys. We'll see you guys soon. Semper Fi.